It's the third week of the month. Cedric just finished with his day training and was making his way back to his room. Upon arriving there, he brought out some food and started eating while watching some videos online. After that, he freshened up and sat on his bed. Rubbing his palms together, he summoned the system shop for a single purpose, and that is to buy equipment for his next hell dive. It'd be a sin to not spend the demon souls I earned from my hard work to make me stronger. He mused as the shop loaded its contents. Being poor is no longer an excuse for him. He had earned a sizable amount of demon souls as a reward for clearing the previous month's mandatory service. With this much on hand, he should be able to secure some decent items for his next run. The first one he searched for was something to protect his body. He wants armor, but he first checked if he could afford a combat suit instead. Combat suits are a piece of modern equipment that has been made popular these days. They were skin-tight like spandex suits of old-age heroes, meaning that they're lightweight, but make no mistake, they are durable. It is said that even those at the lowest tiers were impervious to mortal weapons. They're weak against blunt damage, but that can be remedied by attaching pads here and there. It is also said that these suits are resistant to the harsh environment of purgatory. They're also flexible, breathable, and easy to clean. As a result, customers can purchase something lightweight, comfortable, and offers a decent level of protection. Cedric himself had no idea what they're made of, but the reviews this product got were overwhelmingly positive and didn't look fake. Filtering his search to strictly display combat suits, the shop window updated and his vision was immediately swarmed by multiple products for him to consider. All of them passed through the standards of the Lifestyle Guild, so their quality shouldn't be questioned. Ack. There's too many. Cedric groaned. He then added some more filters for his search to display exactly what he needed, and after loading, the list became more manageable. Cedric strictly searched for Tier 1 combat suits. He didn't bother with those at the upper tiers since he's fairly confident of his ability to dodge the attacks of zombies. He just wanted some measure of protection against them should he be cornered, which was already very unlikely to happen, so for now he doesn't need those super high-end products. Violent Wind Combat Suit, T1. Offers a decent level of protection. Special effect, speed plus 10%. Price, 19,999 DS. Red Power Combat Suit, T1. Offers a decent level of protection. Special effect, striking force plus 10%. Price, 25,000 DS. White Crane Combat Suit, T1. Offers a decent level of protection. Special effect, energy consumption minus 10%. Price, 25,000 DS. Coiling Python Combat Suit, T1. Offers a decent level of protection. Special effect, flexibility plus 12%. Price, 21,999 DS. Even with the filters he had set, there were still at least 1,000 items that were listed on the shop. Cedric certainly wasn't expecting this many versions of combat suits to exist. He also noticed their quirky names, and he honestly doesn't know what to feel about those. They had varying prices too, which is most likely due to the bonus effects they offered. In his opinion, these suits are expensive, but this was mostly his prudence talking. He could afford them, but best believe that he would peruse the list as sternly as he could to get his money's worth. After browsing each item on his list, he eventually decided to pick the best one in his opinion. Undead Hunter Combat Suit, T1. Offers a decent level of protection. Special effect, Undead Hater against Undead Class Demons. This suit's effectiveness increases by 15%. Price, 25,000 DS. It's practically tailored for him. This suit would serve him well for a long time, considering that the system wouldn't suddenly change his mandatory task. While that's very unlikely to happen, it could still happen. Still, he's had the same task for years now, and it's still the same, so this suit should fit his needs the best. Its price was reasonable, especially since the special effect was situational at best, but it's a guarantee for him, so he didn't need that long to make a decision. He added his choice to his cart and continued shopping for more equipment. Purgatory Striders, T1. All-terrain combat boots for hell dives. Special effect, all-terrain traversal, Purgatory. Price, 5,000. The Purgatory Striders are another famous piece of equipment. Its creation even precedes his. When it comes to combat shoes/boots, you can never really go wrong with a pair of these since they're specifically made to make Purgatory traversal much easier. Of course, Cedric doesn't have that problem anymore. With his footwork skill, he could be barefoot and still not have any difficulties going anywhere within the purgatory. What he's paying for here is quality in the sense of comfort and durability. Again, the Purgatory Striders were created to traverse all kinds of harsh environmental conditions that the Purgatory could throw at its challenger. The next thing on his list was a new sword, of course. While the training sword was still viable, it wasn't created with the actual combat in mind. And since he still has plenty of capital to spend, he wouldn't compromise. Once again, he was surprised by the sea of choices presented to him. While this wasn't the first time that he perused the list of available swords for his level, it's still overwhelming. Especially since every day, new products would be registered in the shop. To minimize his list, he refined his filtered search, displaying products that only came from stores that have at least 4.5 stars and above reviews. He also entered the same star ratings for the item reviews as well. He even added the system's guarantee in his filters, which further shortened the list available. After sorting through the filters, he was only left with less than 500 items. It's considerably less than what it was previously, but make no mistake, the remaining ones are the cream of the crop. Cedric inspected the displayed items for sale, one by one, carefully making notes about the swords that left an impression on him. Once he saw everything, he weighed his choices, and eventually, he made his decision. The addition to his cart was Refined Carrion Longsword, T1. A balanced, durable, and refined longsword, made by the descendant of a renowned craftsman lineage. Special effects: sharpness plus 15%, durability plus 20%. Price: 50,000 DS. It was a damn expensive sword. Something that the old Cedric wouldn't even dream of holding. This item was embedded with the logo of the Carrion family, a famous lineage of smiths that hailed since the beginning of the cataclysm. They're also one of the founding members of the Lifestyle Guild and held a major political power due to their accumulated merits since the dawn of the superhumans. Just the fact that someone from the Carrion lineage made this sword, it doesn't even matter if they were from the direct line or not, was already a justification for its price tag. In addition, this sword has the system's guarantee, meaning that the system itself deemed this product a good one, a cut above the rest, which makes it worth it. Cedric went through the list of swords and already confirmed that this one was the best for his needs, so despite feeling a fine pinch in his wallet, he still added it to his cart. He also purchased a dagger, protective paddings, headgear, utility belt, shorts, underwear, tank tops, and other miscellaneous things like incendiary bombs, smoke bombs, Molotov cocktails, flashbangs, medic kits, a respirator, and so on. By the time he was done, the total amount he spent was a little over 470,000 DS. Cedric wanted to cry because he hadn't spent that much before, even if he combined all of his previous checkouts. Even so, despite feeling hesitant about it, he still bought everything since his safety and security were more important than hoarding this many demon souls. This just made him even more thankful that he learned things at an accelerated pace. Because without it, he would be more pressed about the amount of demon souls he needed to spend just to make himself stronger. Once again, the best thing about using the system shop was the speed of the transaction. The moment he paid for everything was also the same moment he received the items he bought. Of course, Cedric inspected the quality of the items he bought and as expected, every single one was worth their price. Now that he was done securing his equipment, he would spend the next couple of days training with his new equipment. The faster he gets used to them, the earlier he can complete his preparations for his next hell dive. I knew it really did rise in difficulty. Cedric mused as he sliced through several zombies at once. While he hadn't stopped moving as soon as the timer started, Cedric's senses were sharp enough to pay attention to everything that was happening around him. He knows where the zombies are, how far were they from where he was, and how many spawned in clusters. Since his brain could process multiple thoughts at once, organizing information was a simple task for him. At the same time, the wonders of the tactics skill were giving him an absolute edge in his fight against the Horde. Even though the spawn rate of zombies definitely increased in numbers and lethality, Cedric was able to handle everything coming his way with relative ease. His tactical skills allowed him to minimize his energy expenditure while producing maximum results. Cedric was like a ghost on the battlefield. Wearing his new equipment, he was like a tiger that had grown wings. It's been nearly 20 minutes since he started his hell dive and so far, he was confident that all of his victims fell before even seeing his silhouette. Since his body rating increased, he's exponentially faster than before and that's without leveling up at all. This just further proves the importance of aptitude ratings, even more so if there was a way to increase them. Cedric's title as the Junior Undead Slayer was working in real time as well. Even though the zombies were brain dead, they showed an instinctual reaction against him. He noticed the subtle pause in their movements the moment they spawned, something that only happened this time, and he allowed that to the effect of his title. Continuing his work, Cedric dashed through the battlefield with grit and vigor. He sliced through zombies, his sword was like a hot knife through butter. He met no resistance at all. He was in his prime. His ki thrummed beneath his skin, supplying him with a vigorous flow of energy that supported his activities. The gleam of his sword became the only thing his first few victims saw before they died. Cedric was admittedly having a fun time tearing through clusters of zombies with relative ease, but he wasn't showing that on his face. He was calm and collected on the outside, but he runs hot on the inside. With his zombie-slaying rate, it's the battlefield that couldn't keep up with him. It could spawn enough zombies to keep him still or even slow him down. Additionally, Cedric hasn't missed so far. Whenever a zombie gets touched by his sword, they will die. He has yet to require a second strike to feel like a zombie. Cedric was akin to a bulldozer at this point. He demolishes every cluster of zombies he encounters. He couldn't be slowed down or touched at all. He fluttered like a gracious dancer across the battlefield, carrying a lethal grace that proved deadly to all zombies he encountered. Soon, the mutated zombies started appearing. But, so what? For Cedric, that change could hardly be felt. To him, mutated zombies are just a tad bit stronger zombies. Against the cold gleam of his sword, they all fall the same. Of course, he prioritized the mutated zombies first. After all, if they're left alone, they could pose a problem to him, but that won't happen if he could get to them before they could do anything, right? It is truly absurd for someone of his tier and level to have this kind of strength, but if one thinks about it, it would start making sense. People who had the same aptitude rating as his could do as much as he could. Of course, that's under the assumption that they have the same skills and dedication that Cedric possesses. In fact, they might even perform better than he could. It makes Cedric wonder if there were people who discovered this method and are capitalizing on it. This fighting capability was just too out of his world. And the fact that he could still increase his overall strength by leveling up was utterly insane. Cedric always knew that superhumans were powerful. He had seen them in action after all. But honestly, the power he possesses currently was something only a Tier 2 or Tier 3 could display. He's Tier 1, for crying out loud. Possessing this kind of capability feels illegal to him, but you certainly won't hear him complaining. Especially not when faced with this, frankly, unreasonable mandatory service. As he was having fun, Cedric decided to test out his other toys. He threw all types of explosives available to him to see how the zombies reacted to them. The incendiary bombs did their thing, incinerating zombies in large clusters, reducing them to ash in mere seconds after exploding. Smoke bombs obstructed their already dull senses even further, he even saw them mistaking each other as prey. Flashbangs caused permanent blindness to all zombies who had the unfortunate fate of looking at it. It quite literally burned their eyes, causing them a world of pain. Molotov cocktails produced a similar effect as the incendiary bombs did minus the explosion. The difference was that the former's flames spread more than the latter's did. He also tried decoys, which either produced sound or contained rotten flesh that attracted the zombies' attention. He also tried deadly traps and so on. Of course, he took a mental note of their reaction towards them because it would naturally affect his decision the next time he shopped for supplies. But of course, the most important aspect of everything was his skills and his main equipment. His combat suit worked wonders. He could feel the special effects applying already the moment the first zombie spawned. The difference was obvious to him since he possessed heightened senses. Cedric was also fairly certain that he loved his new sword. While it might be longer compared to his training sword, that posed no problem to him thanks to his expertise at handling swords. Even though the fencing skill evolved to sword ki, that doesn't mean that the effects of the former were lost to him. The former allowed him to basically use all types of swords almost instinctively since he maxed it out. The latter was the budding essence of what swordsmanship truly was. With these skills, he didn't face any difficulty transitioning from a regular sword to a long sword. The weight was also not one of his concerns. Hell, if he so desired, he could fight just as well while holding a colossal greatsword. That's the type of guarantee that his skills give him, especially when they're maxed out. Eventually, the first boss appeared. And again, Cedric wasn't surprised nor panicked about its arrival. He already knew that he would be facing one ahead of time, so he was quite relaxed about it. Sure, the first boss was stronger than before, but again, it hardly made any difference for him. Cedric killed it with a single strike aimed at its head. The Horde continued to evolve since then, increasing the challenge again and again after every 10 minutes. Slowly but surely, Cedric was being forced to reveal his strength to deal with them, but that's not surprising at all. His ki reserves have grown, and his sword ki remained just as sharp even after an extensive period of usage. All in all, Cedric remained fierce as he eliminated all zombies that entered his field of senses, with extreme prejudice. The surprising part occurred at the very end of the run, where he was supposed to face the final boss. Instead of a single Tier 2 boss like he was expecting, he was met with two Tier 2 boss, one was a scavenger type, and the other was a brute type. It was mildly alarming for him, but not enough to cause panic in him. The scavenger screeched in ferocity at him while the brute started throwing large chunks of stones at him. Still, with how lithe and agile Cedric was, he managed to evade most of their attacks. Some landed on him, but because of his flexibility and tolerance he could shake them off. The injuries didn't do much on his equipment either, so it's all good. Since he was facing two Tier 2 bosses, Cedric didn't dare to hold back. He unleashed every strength he could muster to eliminate them, and eventually, he did. He won and cleared his mandatory service for this month. Now, he earned his +1 clearance streak. And with his growth, it's to be expected that this count will only increase from this point onwards. When he returned to reality, only 30 minutes passed as per usual. He unequipped his armor and sat on the bed to assess his earnings. Cedric killed thousands of zombies in one go, and because their spawn numbers increased, his rewards also increased as well since he killed every single one of them. He once again received an S-rank rating on his performance, which made him giddy. He also received a rounded-up total of 1 million demon souls, plus 20 Tier 2 demon souls, as his reward. There were no bonuses, but that hardly mattered to him. In the end, Cedric retired for the day knowing that he had become a millionaire. He's truly grateful for his progress. Profile. Name, Cedric Stormrider. Age, 21. Race, human. Class, Tier 1, Swordsman. Level, 2. Titles, Junior Undead Slayer, Scholar, Sword Child. Aptitude. Body, S. Energy, S. Spirit, S, locked. Tier 2 REQ. Final rating, S. Skills. Actives, Sword Ki LV.5, Kickboxing, M. Passives, Vision, M, Learning, M, Key Mastery LV.6, Smell, M, Multitasking, M, Taste, M, Touch, M, Listening, M, Intuition, M, Footwork, M, Recovery, M, Tolerance, M, Tactics, M. Mandatory task. Hell Dive, survive the endless undead horde for 3 hours. Rewards 100% demon soul gain, clearance streak +1. Punishment for failure streak +1. Record, clear streak 3, failure streak 0. 2 months passed by quickly, like a serene river. Cedric, who's now an entirely different person from who he was a few months ago, barely felt the passage of time. Focused on his task to become stronger to ensure his survival. His routine hasn't changed. He still trains every day, taking it easy at least once a week to allow his body to keep up with the strain. As a result, he had seen explosive growth in his overall strength, making him as one of the most powerful fighters within the Risk Management Center. Since he was able to keep up with the ever-rising challenge of his mandatory service, his monitoring chip now turned yellow, meaning that he had more wiggle room when it came to his survival. Should he fail to clear his mandatory task, it would once again turn his chip red, but Cedric obviously doesn't plan on letting that happen. Besides Harold and himself, of course, nobody seemed to care about his progress, which was fine with him. He knows that everyone else here was too absorbed in their own fight for survival to even congratulate him, and that's understandable. Hell, he'd actually feel weird if they praised him now since he's used to being ignored by the rest. That being said, Cedric knows that the wardens are now paying close attention to him. Not to the extent that they're watching his every single move, of course. Just close enough to see if there's foul play happening, and since they had yet to approach him, that means that they haven't found anything yet. And it better stay that way, since Cedric was truly trying hard here. Cedric wasn't really concerned about the eyes that were following him. It's not like they'd discover his deepest secret anyway. It's impossible for them to discover where his true strength lies unless he tells them that himself. Any type of skill that allows one to view the system profile of strangers was prohibited by Akala. It is only allowed within professional background checks. Even then, the information they will receive will be limited. The Risk Management Center might be a government-funded facility, but they hardly cared about the people who ended up here, so Cedric was extremely confident that nobody would discover his real secrets here. Not even the chief warden will know, that's unless Cedric himself informs them. And he's not that stupid to do that. Cedric knew that they already reported his activities to the chief warden. It's actually hard for him not to know, considering how sharp his senses were even at their limited degree due to his purposeful delay of his personal growth. Yet even so what? Their reports won't really have a significant difference. He already knew that they had discovered his training routine, but he was not hiding that. In fact, Cedric was pretty sure that someone already reported his activities to the chief way before this, and it was already recorded. So, comparing that to the recent reports, they wouldn't really discover anything different from his activities. This has been Cedric's daily routine. He's like a machine now actually, since he would often discover himself doing the routine before he gives the mental command. It's like his body was now moving out of sheer instinct. Cedric doesn't know if that's good or bad, but it hasn't injured him so far, so there's no harm in letting it happen. On another point, Cedric was a multimillionaire now in terms of demon souls. He's actually quite stumped with how many demon souls he earned just by clearing his mandatory task. With how much he had, he could live in luxury, well, as luxurious as this place would allow, and still have enough to keep up with his daily expenses. The more times he clears his mandatory task, the more he will earn, so he doesn't see himself running out of demon souls anytime soon. Of course, there's the idea of spending his hard-earned money on stuff that would make his life easier and more comfortable. He'd wanted to buy more high-end combat suits, swords, skill books, and so on. But this is where his indecisiveness reared its ugly head. Cedric had no real need for those right now. In fact, the way he is right now could already be considered as overkill for his hell dives. Sure, the hell dives are becoming harder and harder each month that passed, but his growth from his relentless training manages to keep up with that. Even with the fairly common equipment he has, it's already akin to giving wings to a tiger. His hell dives recently give him pressure, but not enough to actually push him to the brink of insanity like before. So really, buying more equipment to strengthen himself even further sounds excessive to him. So, he chose to save his demon souls for now. It wouldn't be too late to purchase items he'd actually need later anyway. Especially since the system shop's transactions would always remain fast. That being said, Cedric was prepared for emergencies. He had bought an extra pair of equipment and necessities, just in case he got placed in a tight spot. Beyond that though, he kept his expenditure at a minimum level of comfort. Currently, it was midnight. Cedric could be seen sitting on the floor in his room. Looking closely, numerous sigils and runes are glowing around the room. They're nothing special though, just something to isolate the rampant key from escaping the room. He didn't want to cause alarm throughout the entire center with his nightly activities. With his legs crossed in a meditative position, a strain could be seen on his face. Sweat dripped down his entire body as he continuously circulated his ki through his entire body. Each successful circulation purified his ki to a higher degree. His entire body was emitting a faint white light in the process. His powerful heartbeat echoed across the room as he continued, and his body was also releasing a subtle amount of pressure. In his body, his ki was just about finished with its 100th circulation for the night. Once it has returned to its previous location, an explosive change occurs. Tremors rocked Cedric's body as his ki suddenly condensed into a faint yet solid core. It reduced its size to a hollow marble, which penetrated his heart, turning into an aperture in there. An unprecedented clarity illuminated his entire being. Cedric could feel his entire existence ascending to a level unlike before. The feeling was positively euphoric and he couldn't help but release a groan. Due to the sensation. His field of senses expanded and elevated to a finer degree. The abundance of ki within his body practically doubled, and he could vaguely feel his spirit being uplifted despite knowing that he shouldn't be able to access it for now. When the tremor ceased, Cedric felt an unprecedented level of calmness surging within him. He felt like there was nothing that would ever surprise him anymore, nothing would ever disrupt the calmness and serenity of his mind, and that in itself was shocking ironically. Cedric felt so light, it's like the resistance stamp became worthless, just like that. Of course, he would increase the level of resistance later once he's done appreciating this feeling of freedom. When he opened his eyes, a placid and serene calm seemingly washed over his entire room. It's like his immediate vicinity resonated with his mental state, it was incredible. Then, his state slowly subsided. Cedric already knows that it's only a fleeting thing, but he still enjoyed it to its fullest. With this breakthrough over, he officially stepped into the first stage of the White Lotus core scripture, the hollow core stage. It took him some time, but that can't be helped. The origin of this technique was different from where he was. He's already lucky that it was even recognized by this world, so you won't hear him complaining. Because of his breakthrough, his key mastery jumped all the way to LV.7 from LV.5. With that increase, he's expecting his sword key to enter a short period of explosive growth as well. He just got even stronger, and that came with the confidence that, just like the previous months, this month's hell dive should be a piece of cake for him. Alright, now that that's over. It's about time I do something about the smell, ugh. His breakthrough also came with the expulsion of impurities from his body, so after riding out his high, he didn't hesitate to run towards the bathroom to clean himself of this filth. He has never been one to pay close attention to what he looks like on a daily basis, that has never been one of his hobbies. He tries to look at least presentable enough whenever he goes out, but beyond that, he doesn't care about how others perceive him. If anything, this just got worse when he got admitted to this place. With how difficult life was here, how could he have any time to take care of his personal appearance? He had no space nor time for vanity, he's focused on survival, just that. Believe him, he's really not that narcissistic. He's merely admiring his reflection in the mirror now, since it has truly been a while since he had taken a good look at himself. His reflection displayed a 6-foot-tall man with healthy and glossy blonde hair long enough to tie up in a bun. A pair of golden-colored pupils stared back at him, seemingly seeing right through his soul, exposing even the deepest and darkest secrets he kept. With a bronzed skin complexion and rippling muscles hiding underneath a very loose shirt and baggy pants, the man was certified to be a head-turner. His face was angular, sharp jawline, high-bridged nose, freckled cheeks, sculpted physique, thin lips, perfect set of teeth. Tall, lean, mysterious, and extremely handsome. That's the summary of what he saw from his reflection. A guy with a face like this would never have any difficulty scoring a girl or two on a bar. Add the fact that he's far from lacking down south, there's no doubt that he could make any woman happy and satisfied. Cedric smiled wryly at himself. He could have passed as a perfect young master if it weren't for his status here. It's just a shame that his looks don't help with his mandatory service. If it does, then he would have certainly had an easy life with a face card like this. Shaking off the weird thoughts swirling in his mind, Cedric wiped his face and stepped out of the bathroom. He sat on the edge of his bed and looked at the restriction seal, placed on the back of his left hand. Summoning the seal, he saw its display, LV.9 restriction. A LV.9 restriction was enough to completely paralyze a Tier 1 LV.9 superhuman from head to toe completely. Of course, that's assuming that they don't possess any method of escaping the restriction itself. Yet, here Cedric was, shrugging it off like it was nothing but a minor inconvenience. If he were to get rid of this seal, Cedric bets that his speed and explosive strength would reach a mind-boggling degree. Truly absurd, considering that he's only still LV.2. Of course, this was thanks to his most recent breakthrough in his cultivation. Reaching the hollow core stage of the White Lotus core technique already gave him this much power. What more on its later stages? If he wanted to, he could do some serious damage to his room. Give him 5 minutes, and he would be able to completely pulverize it just with his bare fists alone. If his enemy's bones weren't as tough as concrete, there's no way they'd survive a full-powered punch from him. That's how absurd Cedric has gotten after his breakthrough. Sadly though, his recent breakthrough made the resistance stamp almost useless. The highest level of restriction it could go was Tier 2 LV.5, and due to Cedric's growth, he had no doubts that he would surpass that very soon. In his generous estimates, it would only take him a month and a half before the stamp loses out all of its worth for him. He didn't sweat much over it though. That's gonna happen sooner or later anyway. The breakthrough just expedited the process. Cranked up the restriction level to Tier 2 LV.1, Cedric felt the familiar strain on his movements. He started wriggling his fingers, then his arms. He did the same with his toes and legs. After that, he stood up slowly. He wasn't in a rush. He sank his perception into his body and felt his muscles pulsing to adjust to the restriction. Once he was able to walk around freely, he did some stretches, which caused more strain on his body. Cedric took this in stride, however. Not really minding the pain and just working out his way through it, allowing his body to get used to the restriction. Once he was done with that, he walked out of his room, striding as if he didn't have the seal on himself at all. His expression was placid as he made out of his way to his training grounds. He was aware that he was receiving looks from his peers, but he paid no mind to them. As far as he knew, he didn't know them and they don't know him. He didn't mind it staying that way. The wardens were also observing his movements, but they didn't stop him. From what his senses picked up, the wardens just took note of his presence and went back to their respective duties. Cedric felt the rowdiness of the crowd. Nothing has changed in this place. It still reeks of desperation and insanity. He's used to it at his point. Upon arriving at his training spot, he took out his sword and started swinging. Today, just like any other day previously, he planned on following his set routine. While it is true that the growth of his skills slowed down at his point, even with his titles applied, he still stuck to it faithfully since this was the best he could do. This place had no access to high-end facilities that offered a boost in his training speed. Such luxury isn't available to people of his status. He also couldn't ask anybody here to be his sparring partner since he doubted that they'd be able to keep up with him. Plus, he didn't want them bothering him at all, so really, this was the best he could make of his situation. Cedric could feel someone staring at him. Focusing slightly, he discovered that a group of wardens, who were on their break, were watching him from the upper floors of the RMC as he trained. He could even hear them talking about him. He's at it again, is that what he always does every single day? Doesn't he get bored? Well, considering that that's his routine for months now at this point, I'd say no. And hey, I actually would much prefer if every single convict here were like him. Maybe the atmosphere of this place wouldn't be as horrible as it is now. True, true. His chip is yellow. A few months ago, that was red. It seems that whatever he's doing was working. Good for him then. To me though, I'm just glad that he's not crazy like the others were. I'm relieved to see that he hasn't lost hope yet. You know, it really makes me curious, what changed? I mean, I'm fairly certain he wasn't like that before. By that you mean? I meant hardworking. I've seen his records before. A few months ago, he's one of the worst cases we have here. He looked malnourished, like he was one gust of wind away from toppling over and dying. He also used to be an emo, yet look at him now. If it weren't for the fact that I saw the same reports as you did, I could swear that you're talking about someone else. But yeah, his progress really makes one curious. That being said though, you know our rule about curiosities and all that. I know. I never said I'd investigate. I'm just wondering, that's all. Besides, the guy's different in a positive way, so I have no complaints. Cedric subtly shook his head. He didn't overreact, because he didn't want to know that he could hear them. Besides, they're just gossiping anyway. It's not like they're harming him through that, so he also has no complaints. Doing his best to ignore their conversation, Cedric returned his focus to his warm-up. He brandished his sword slowly, allowing his body to adjust to the resistance while maintaining the perfect execution of each strike. His body acquiesced to his will like a machine. Slowly but surely, he could feel his body getting used to the new level of restriction when all of a sudden, dread washed throughout his entire body. He froze in place. His mental alarms blared dangerously at him as his head sharply shifted through the direction of the center. It was then followed by the sharp screech of the alarms echoing across the facility. Cedric almost couldn't believe it. His hands shook as he hurriedly manipulated his field of senses to focus on the interior of the center. He then felt the wave of panic, heard the alarmed cries of his fellow convicts, smelled fear and corruption, and saw several silhouettes jumping out of a newly formed spatial crevice in the middle of the reception area of the center. It was then that reality truly sunk in for Cedric. Paling ever so slightly, he whispered. Somebody just turned into a node. Ah. Demons. Demons are here. How can there be demons here? Fuck. Move out. Help. I can't stand. Please. Somebody, help me. Frantic screams and cries for help echoed across the entire facility. It was accompanied by explosions, tremors, and sounds of battle. The convicts were obviously panicking. It caused them to become unable to fully comprehend what was happening around them. Some desperately tried to run away, others hid, some locked themselves in their respective cells, while opportunists tried to use the chaos to their advantage. The wardens were busy trying to pacify the scared convicts. Most of them are helping with the efforts of quelling the chaos that descended around them. Sadly, this development completely took them by surprise, and thus, they didn't have any time to prepare themselves. Beast demons took the risk management center like a storm. Nobody knew where they were coming from. All they knew was that the demons were killing everybody who didn't look like them, and for the convicts, this was bad news since the demons were too strong for them to take care of. The wardens were doing their best. They summoned their weapons and called upon their powers to drive the demons back. Sadly, there's just too many. Furthermore, the demons were too swift and strong. They're certainly not your ordinary demons. It's like they took steroids before arriving here, causing them to go completely berserk. Within the reception hall, a group of wardens covered each other's backs while defending against a group of beast demons. They're facing 1 pig demon, 3 avian demons, and 4 bull demons. The wardens went all out. They have armor equipped as well as weapons. They threw spells, skills, debuffs, and many more. Unfortunately, the flesh of these demons was too tough. They just tanked whatever they threw at them. Demons already possess an innate physical superiority compared to humans. Add the fact that there are beast demons who prided themselves on their absurdly strong physical bodies, and it is no wonder why the wardens were having a difficult time. And if the wardens themselves had it hard, what more could be said for mere convicts of this place? It's not like they're here because they are strong, it's the opposite in fact. Damn it. I don't want to die here. I never wanted to be in this place. This is so fucking unfair. Cried out by the dying man from one corner of the facility. He wasn't alone in this sentiment. Pretty much everyone who just lost their lives within the first few minutes since the raid started shared the same thoughts as him. They never wanted this. They never wanted to live like this. If they had a choice, they would rather choose to be normal, unevolved humans instead of living in a miserable place like this. And to think that this is the way they died, it's just so fucking unfair. They simply can't reconcile with their deaths being like this. The worst part about this is that the demons were also spreading corruption wherever they went. Said corruption carried horrible power which consumed the victims of the demons, turning them into mere puppets, undeads that just added to the number of demons invading this place. Well, I'll be damned. Boom. A loud explosion shook the entire facility. A cloud of dust kicked up, obscuring the vision of both the convicts and the wardens. Raising their guards, they all felt nervous, thinking that a demon caused that loud explosion. That's when they heard a deep and gruff voice rousing them from their stupor. You punks. Get the convicts to the bunker in the basement. You'll find the rest there. Come on. Move along already. Sir, yes sir. As it turns out, that voice belonged to the chief warden himself, Lucas Brightstone. While the wardens gathered the scared and trembling convicts, the chief warden took a puff of his cigar. He then turned around and faced the beast demons who were now looking at him warily. Humph. Boom. The demons didn't even see what happened. In their perspective, they only heard the humans snort and suddenly, everything turned black for them. Their heads exploded like watermelons, scattering bits and pieces of their flesh all over the hall, painting it with gruesome and filthy black blood. Chief Lucas wore a somber and frightening expression. He certainly didn't like what was happening. To think that someone turned into a node right under our noses. He mused as he scattered his senses to locate the other demons that invaded his turf. It's either our security turned lackluster, which shouldn't happen, or there's foul play here. In the years that he had been assigned the chief warden here, there had never been an event like this. His punks might be timid sometimes, but he could confidently say that he trained them well. As such, he doubted that it was their fault for not seeing this coming. Moreover, he was there when they reviewed the list of convicts who were at extreme risk. He personally monitored the candidates and almost all of the convicts they had each day. With his experience as a soldier for almost decades now, there's no way he'd make such a rookie mistake like this. With this in mind, he could only think that there must be foul play here. And being the chief warden came with some privileges. He had connections outside of this place, and there have been talks about a certain group of cultists who became a prime suspect for all of this. Blowing up another cluster of demons, Chief Lucas groaned in irritation. If his thoughts were proven correct, this means that this little group of cultists managed to orchestrate this event right under his nose. If that wasn't enough to make him irritated, there's also the fact that he would take the brunt of this in front of his supervisors since he's the one in charge here. Human. Chief Lucas heard a call from behind him. He turned around and saw a lone demon towering over him. Chief Lucas wasn't surprised about its presence as he already felt this one coming already. He wasn't intimidated by its size either, so he just looked up at it calmly. "You look strong for a human." The demon uttered, there was a trace of curiosity in its voice. "That's no good. You will have a problem with our plans. As such, you shall remain here. You shall be my playmate until we finish our task here. TCH. Chief Lucas clicked his tongue as he realized that he was already trapped and isolated. Great, my boss will chew my ass for this. In the basement where the bunker was, chaos reigned. Gunshots, explosions, flashes of light, and colorful projectiles rained as the wardens, along with a few capable convicts, did their best to defend the bunker that was keeping them safe. Numerous beast demons swarmed towards them, hell-bent on sinking their claws into their flesh. Their attacks were barely doing anything to the demons, but at the very least, they could push them back. Shit. We can't go on like this. We only have so much energy to spare. These demons are like sponges, they're just absorbing our attacks and shrugging them off like they're nothing. We will be overrun soon. One of the wardens cursed. What do we do? I don't want to die here. I'm still too young. I still have a future beyond me. Fuck. If you don't want to die, keep attacking. You lot as well. If you have the energy to complain, use it to kill these fuckers instead. Complaining won't get you anywhere. That's right. Less talk, more gas. Fire. Die, you fucking demons. This is all your fault. Chaos continued happening around the bunker. People could hardly see anything due to how many attacks were being thrown everywhere. Unfortunately, even with their fearsome firepower, they were barely doing damage to their foes. Roar. That loud roar shook everybody's soul, causing them to freeze. An overwhelming sense of dread washed over their entire being, causing them to sweat coldly. It didn't matter whether it was a warden or a convict, they all felt that primal fear, and some even passed out completely. From the large dust cloud, a towering figure emerged. It was another beast demon, a tiger demon. Standing tall on its hind legs, the creature was about 10 meters in height. Its very presence brought a level of despair to anyone who laid eyes upon it. Its eyes were crimson red, emanating a palpable killing intent that caused anyone's heart to constrict. It has large paws, bloodied with bits and pieces of flesh hanging from it. Not only was this demon huge, but its body looked incredibly tough as well. Just from a single glance, one could tell that they wouldn't be able to damage its flesh using the weapons they have now. It's over. It was unknown who said this, or if it wasn't even said by someone in the first place. Either way, nobody refuted this statement, especially when the tiger demon started walking towards them. But just as they were bracing for their imminent deaths, something shocking happened. The tiger demon whined pitifully and collapsed on the ground, kicking up a large dust cloud as it did so. When the dust cloud cleared up a bit, they saw a blonde-haired man with gleaming golden eyes standing over its corpse with a bloodied sword in hand. Flashback. Somebody just turned into a node. Cedric exclaimed in bewilderment. At that very instant, he heard the screams of people around him and felt the sheer panic that descended in the place. Observing through his sharpened field of senses, Cedric took all the information he could to know just what they were dealing with. Beast demons. He exclaimed. He had seen and learned about beast demons before. They are incredibly tough, possessing a blessed physique and instincts, making them extremely deadly in combat. They're also highly territorial and savage. A grim countenance appeared on his face. This was bad. Cedric could already tell that most of the people here, yes, that includes the wardens, wouldn't be able to contend with the beast demons that appeared here. Speaking with human terms, beast demons would have a body rating of A at the minimum, and this is inborn. It is very rare for beast demons to have a physique weaker than that. And since this was an innate aptitude, this would only raise the gap between and humans even more, especially as the beast demons grow up in their hostile environment. Cedric wasn't one to underestimate his own race, but the facts couldn't be denied, especially now that he's seeing them. What's more, is that these beast demons aren't the ones from purgatory, they're the real thing. He of course wasn't privy to this information yet since he didn't possess high enough authority. But the truth is, there is a huge difference between purgatory demons and actual demons. The purgatory was a buffer plane, a defense system that Akala created to protect herself and humans. If all humans were forced to participate in hell dives since the start of the cataclysm, it wouldn't make sense for demons to still exist to this day. Additionally, for the demons at least, the purgatory was more like a full dive virtual reality. Only their consciousness enters that plane, not their real body. Of course, there is a price for them to pay, and that's the very existence of themselves, the very thing that made up these so-called demon souls. The more they experience death within the purgatory, the faster their deaths would come. It would first begin with them losing their memories, the oldest first. Once it reaches the point that they can no longer remember anything, they will turn mad and their health will start to deteriorate. Once they're sucked dry, turning into a mere husk of their former self, that's when they will die permanently. This was the way how humans and demons fought since then. But of course, the demons didn't like this arrangement, especially since they were forced to comply. As such, they devised a way to bypass purgatory so that they could subjugate Prime Earth already. By fighting humans within the purgatory, the demons could also collect intel from them. And while some demons are stupid, not all of them are. They could scheme just like humans could, and they possess innate cunningness that humans can't match. If Akala could force demons to comply with her terms, they too figured out a way to force Akala to their set of rules. That's how the nodes came out to be. Nodes were the demons' method which allowed them to bypass the purgatory directly and land on Prime Earth to do whatever the hell they wanted. And since humans are too careful, demons would do their best to capitalize on any chances they can get. Again, purgatory demons are vastly different from true demons. One could even say that the former was a watered-down version of the latter. That's why it isn't wise to judge their strength according to the preconceived list of the power scaling chart. Shaking his head from any distracting thoughts, Cedric resolved himself to move. While he might still carry a little bit of bitterness, sarcasm, and complaints in his heart about the unfairness of the world, he just couldn't sit still like this and watch as his fellow convicts die. Not when he could obviously help. So, he donned his armor. Not even bothered to change his outfit into the combat suit. He just attached the armor to his prisoner's uniform and took out his combat sword. Then, his figure started dashing towards the mouth of the conflict. With his speed, he reached the first group of demons real quick. He had come across some of his fellow convicts that are either running away in fear or trying to take advantage of the situation. Nevertheless, he didn't bother stopping any of them. He raised his sword, which emitted a faint white light. He then took a deep breath and confronted the demons that sensed him already. Cedric's silhouette seemingly disappeared from their vision, causing their bestial instincts to go haywire. Unfortunately, their reaction time was a little late and it failed to save them. He reappeared behind them. He didn't even bother looking back, he just moved towards his next targets. When he disappeared, the bodies of the beast demons suddenly collapsed. Each of them has a gaping hole on their respective weak spots. Those were about tier 2 in overall strength, but I could also tell that they're just tier 1. Indeed, the usual power scaling chart is only strictly for purgatory demons. Shaking his head, Cedric's figure once again flashed, turning into a mere blur as he stabbed and slashed at the respective weak spots of the demons he faced. Surveying his surroundings, he also discovered that the demon's corruption was turning the corpses of fallen humans into undead. Normally, this would be a problem for anyone, but not Cedric since his title, Junior Undead Slayer, was in full effect. He already understood everything there is to know about undeads, so he was obviously not fazed. I'm not getting any demon souls from killing them. He pointed out inwardly. This means that it only works in purgatory. But they do leave a body behind. He mused, sadly, I'm not a smith, so I can't make use of their remains. Oh well, I'll just collect their valuable parts anyway. Maybe I could sell them later, or maybe I can teach myself how to smith. I do have the memories of that Godking, maybe I can use that as a reference. Cedric continued dashing here and there. He was moving faster than the naked eye could see, it's even to the point where he's leaving after images behind. With the sword key coating his weapon, the physical superiority of beast demons meant nothing to him. His sword was like a hot knife through butter as he stabbed and sliced them apart. It's also during this that he learned that his key had some restraining effect on the demon's corruption. He had a thin film of protective key around his body, and whenever he passed through an area that had been corrupted, his key automatically got rid of it, turning the spot he passed through back to its usual appearance. Sadly though, Cedric doesn't have a complete method on how to get rid of all corruption at once. Passing through every single corrupted area will take too much time and he's kind of in a hurry right now. Maybe he can try it out later, for now though, he had to focus on his task. If everybody hasn't turned mad from fear just yet, then it's safe to assume that they called for backup. Cedric mused to himself. It would be dumb of them not to, especially after seeing what kind of demons appeared here. Cedric was confident that the chief warden wouldn't be a petty person, he was confident that the reinforcements were on the way, and that's somewhat comforting since he might encounter something that's beyond his paycheck here. As he continued his killing spree, Cedric opened his field of senses to its absolute limits. His numerous thought compartments whirred into activity and digested all information he sensed. Yet despite this, Cedric still couldn't locate one person. "Harold, where the fuck are you?" Cedric groaned softly as he continued searching the place. A foreboding feeling swarmed to his chest because he couldn't find him. Harold was his only friend here, and also the majority of the reason why he bravely charged toward the demons. He wanted to save his friend, but he couldn't see him. Thoughts of Harold being dead crept up to his brain, but he forcefully shut it down. He steeled his resolve and was determined to find out where his friend was. He better not be dead or I swear, I'll kill him. He inwardly stressed. It was then that his field of senses detected an alarming development. He froze in his tracks and saw that the basement was about to be overrun. He already knew that the majority of the convicts and wardens went there, occupying the bunker and defending together against the beast demons. However, Cedric just saw the hulking figure of the tiger demon rushing towards that place. It is not there yet, but he already calculated its route, so he's confident about its destination. Grunting to himself, he turned around and started dashing towards the tiger demon to intercept its path. Cedric slaughtered his way towards the tiger demon. His silhouette blurred like a ghost as he moved from one kill to the other. By now, he's mildly convinced that some people already saw his actions, but told himself that he's gonna deal with that later since he had a target to neutralize. The tiger demon sensed him immediately. As a beast demon, its instincts were primed. It knew that a challenger was making its way towards this place, and the beast responded in kind. It roared at Cedric's position, releasing a potent sound of aggression and terror, yet Cedric wasn't fazed. To him, the threatening roar of the beast was nothing more than hot air, a foul one at that. When they saw each other, both disappeared from their previous positions. There was no need to size up or threaten the other party, they immediately kicked into a fight which resulted in shockwaves rocking the foundation of the facility. The tiger demon's paw landed on one of the pillars supporting the building, shattering it with just raw power alone. Cedric wasn't caught though, he utilized his stature wisely, as well as his flexibility to stay out of its way. Tier 3 at least, somewhere around LV.4 to LV.6, Cedric mused inwardly as he analyzed his opponent's raw power. For someone like him, who's a Tier 1 LV.2 swordsman, this goes above and beyond his pay grade. Anybody in his shoes wouldn't hesitate to retreat at the sight of this monstrosity. Not Cedric though. He knows that he's outclassed in sheer power. Even with his upgraded aptitude, there's no competing with a beast like this. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a hopeless battle. From the moment he set eyes upon this beast, he already saw the flaws in its body. His mind already developed several methods to combat it effectively, all he needed to do was to apply them here, and that's why he was not afraid. Evading the beast's attack, Cedric didn't hesitate to immediately launch a counterattack. Brandishing his sword, he made a deep cut into its flesh, on its outstretched arm specifically, invoking the beast's ire. Another paw swiped in his direction, but once again, Cedric evaded it with grace and calmness, completely unbothered and confident that it won't harm him. Due to the nature of his dodge, it placed him closer to the beast's body, which Cedric capitalized on. He lifted his sword and poked its clavicle, earning a pained whine from the beast. Cedric didn't stop there. While the beast took some time to assess the damage done to itself, Cedric took out something from his inventory. He then hopped to gain some elevation and pushed something into the beast's mouth. Tick. 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 Before the beast knew it, it felt a strong blow on its chin, which caused the beast to swallow whatever Cedric fed to it. The ticking sound continued, and after 5 seconds, an explosion, well, it's more accurate to say that an implosion, rocked the beast's entire existence. As it turns out, Cedric fed it a grenade. He knew that the demon's body would be tough, but the same shouldn't be same at its internal organs, and that in itself was a weakness that even beast demons wouldn't be able to ignore, but… Oh come on! That's not enough to blow you up? Cedric whined as he charged again. Sure, he used a low-leveled explosive, but to think that the beast only coughed blood from it was simply absurd. He obviously would like to do that again, but the tiger demon was already alerted, so the chances of that happening were very low. If he ever had the chance though, he'd probably make it eat an incendiary grenade instead. Since feeding it explosives didn't work, Cedric moved on to the other method he has, and this one should be more reliable compared to previous one. Cedric began surrounding the tiger demon through sheer speed. Don't be mistaken, the beast was a fast and Cedric would bet that it could react to his speed, but he wasn't concerned about that. He did this to agitate the beast. The irritated it gets, the more telegraphed its attacks would be, and it would be easier for him to implement his follow-up method to take it down. Once it was obvious that he had the full ire of the beast, Cedric's eyes flashed dangerously. He waited for the perfect timing before launching an opportune strike at the demon's joints. With his sword flowing with sword ki, his blade didn't meet any obstructions. Sure, the beast's body was tough, but with how sharp his sword ki was, it was akin to a paper. Cedric lodged his sword into its arm. With a grunt, he jerked the handle of his sword, causing the beast's arm to be dislocated. And just to be extra sure, he twisted his sword before pulling it out, leaving a gaping wound behind. With that, the chances of that arm recovering while in battle would drastically be reduced. Cedric effectively lessened the attacks coming his way while also impeding the beast's mobility. The tiger demon growled painfully at the injury it took. If looks could only kill, Cedric must have probably dropped dead at this point. In the mind of the beast, it couldn't even begin to comprehend the situation. Never in its wildest dreams did it think that a mere human like this could be this strong. Well, truthfully, the human wasn't strong. The beast's instincts were accurate and it said that the human was certainly weaker than it. But in reality, the human was only outmatched through raw power. Everything else was fair game. The human was quicker and more flexible. He's also more cunning than the beast expected. Plus, the human had the means to bypass its fleshly superiority, so the human was dangerous. This injury will make this battle more challenging, yet the beast couldn't afford to back down. It has been given a task that precedes itself, and if it couldn't take down a puny human such as this one, then there would be no hope of succeeding with that task. The tiger demon growled and pounced at him with renewed vigor. Unfortunately, since one of its arms was dangling uselessly on the side, its danger significantly lowered. Cedric still took the battle seriously, but he's more reserved now. He wasn't playing with his food like this, in fact, it's the opposite. A cornered animal will bare its fangs, even domesticated ones, and Cedric wasn't interested in experiencing its wrath by courting his own death like that, so he remained careful. Another chance presented itself and once again, Cedric disabled its other upper arm. With another injury like that, the tiger demon's lethality took a huge drop. It was then that Cedric released his own killing intent, cowing the demon ever so slightly with a show of resolve. Cedric sent numerous shallow stabs on the demon's body, leaving it wounded and bleeding. The tiger demon did its best to avoid his sword stabs, but it failed miserably. Cedric's attacks were too quick and sharp to be evaded, especially in its current state. Cedric seemingly fell into a frenzy as he did not stop stabbing the demon. His killing intent rose too high that the demon felt death beckoning to it. That's when the demon realized its mortality. It could feel its demise coming quickly. The demon also realized that if it were to fall here, then its task would fail, and its comrades in the afterlife would certainly be disappointed. So, fearing that would happen, the tiger demon stopped hesitating and fled as far as it possibly could, away from this scary human. Eh? And that certainly surprised Cedric. He didn't understand what the demon was thinking, and even if he could, he wouldn't have cared. He had no time for sympathies here, since this was a battle, one that he simply couldn't lose. So, Cedric immediately followed the fleeing demon. Which was honestly disorienting for him as a demon of that size and power was running away from him. He never knew something like this was even remotely possible, but here we are. Cedric's mind calculated the route of the demon. He then figured out that the demon was heading towards the bunker in the basement, where most of his fellow convicts and wardens were hunkering down, which alerted him. He had no idea why this demon was heading there. All he knew was that, whatever its goal was, it absolutely could not happen. So either by hook or by crook, he will kill this demon before it arrives there. Pushing his footwork ever more, he was able to catch up with the beast. His determination to kill it was displayed in the way of numerous stabs on its back, leaving more bleeding wounds in the process. The beast whined pitifully from pain, but it didn't stop running. In desperation, it managed to reach its destination by punching a huge hole as a shortcut. However, it didn't expect to spend all of its remaining longevity with that blow. As such, even though it managed to arrive at its target location, it died before even doing anything. And just for extra insurance, Cedric stabbed it on the back of its head, driving his blade straight to its brain. The beast then fell, not being able to do its task as Cedric stood on top of its corpse. He then looked at the bewildered stare of the crowd and muttered, "He's not here either." Cedric could have stayed behind to check on his fellow convicts or at least reassure them that everything will be fine cause God knows they need it, even the wardens too. But Cedric was preoccupied. He didn't think that it was necessary for him to do that. He's neither a hero nor a member of the staff, so that kind of responsibility doesn't fall on him. Hell, even if it does, he doesn't want it. After giving them a considerate glance, which looked like an act of intimidation to the eyes of his targets due to what they'd just witnessed, he turned around and disappeared into a blurry shadow. With the tiger demon down, the rest shouldn't have a difficult time repelling the remaining invaders, especially since he's also cutting down their numbers. The pressure they would face shouldn't be as heavy as before. Still, in search of Harold, Cedric continued to dash around the center, opening his field of senses to the maximum so that he could spot his only friend amidst all this chaos. In his search, he stumbled upon a weird thing. It was in the reception hall. There's a black bubble here, which almost occupied the entire section of this center. He had a troubled expression on his face upon seeing this. Cedric saw what happened here even though he wasn't physically present. Another demon of the tiger demon's caliber, or perhaps stronger, appeared here. That demon confronted the chief warden who was helping his men. It trapped itself and the chief warden inside this bubble, preventing him from providing help to the rest. He contemplated for a brief second here, thinking to himself if he could somehow help the chief warden. He tried to slice an opening to the bubble using his sword with ki, yet it barely did any damage to it. The shell was too hard and weird for him to do anything to it. After that attempt, Cedric decisively turned around and continued his search for Harold instead. Cedric couldn't afford to waste time here. He already realized that he was too weak to help the chief, so he might as well spend his time wisely and achieve his goal as soon as possible. Besides, with the bubble still around, it means that the chief isn't dead yet. It's illogical for the demon to keep that bubble up if it already dealt with this enemy, so since it's there, that means that the fight was still ongoing. The chief warden was strong, he could tell that much. He should be able to handle this. With that, Cedric scoured the entire place for clues about Harold's whereabouts. He searched high and low, looking for any signs of his friend. He already searched Harold's room, but only his belongings remained there. He already went to the bunker, he's not there either. Obviously he wasn't in the reception hall, since he already passed by that location. Cedric searched the quadrants, cells, rooms, offices, hell, he even checked the comfort rooms to see if his friend got caught with his pants down, which was horrible by the way, but he wasn't there either. He also checked if Harold was amongst the people who were trying to take advantage of the situation, attempting to leave this place while the tragedy occurred, but even after combing through the people one by one, Harold was still missing. Cedric was starting to feel nervous. His hope was draining as the number of his options dwindled. Even with his field of senses at full bloom, he couldn't spot his friend at all. He's now starting to think that Harold might have already turned into a demon's kiddie meal and that it's too late for him to do anything. That was when he sensed a distortion on the edge of his senses. Something appeared just now, and what he saw caused him to freeze in his tracks. Cedric's heart sank to his stomach. His pupils constricted and an overwhelming sense of failure washed over his being. His grip on his sword tightened as he began to hesitate about his next actions. After a minute passed, which felt like forever for him, Cedric wore a steeled expression. Gritting his teeth, he pivoted his foot and began running towards the source of distortion. He was now heading towards where Harold was. Feels weird. That's what Harold felt upon opening his eyes to reality. There was a strange sensation coursing through his veins. Something unfamiliar, dirty, and unpleasant. There's this urge for him to get rid of whatever this was. His instinct screamed at him, telling him that this wasn't right. It irritated him so much that he wanted to claw at his own skin just to get rid of this unpleasant sensation. But that thought didn't last long. It was followed by an overwhelming sense of euphoria, which nearly gave him a whiplash. The feeling was positively pleasant, orgasmic, even. He couldn't help but release a groan from his lips. He then felt something growing on his head. Something thick and quite weighty. Opening his eyes, he was momentarily confused about his new perspective. I'm taller? He mused to himself. Sinking his senses into his body, he could also feel additional limbs behind him that certainly weren't there before. Looking down at his hands, he could see that his forearm was scorched black. It didn't hurt, of course, but it was an unfamiliar sight. He knew that he was a changed man already, he just didn't know how much. Looking around, he saw chaos around. It's as if a storm just passed by. The walls were cracked and the windows were gone. His stuff was scattered all across the room as if a thief just went through them. He could hear cries and groans of pain. He's also more sensitive to the environment now than ever. Then, he spotted a shard of glass on the floor. Before he could even think about moving, the shard of glass already floated up in the air and towards him. Harold let out a surprised sound and smiled, thinking to himself, "Oh, how convenient." That's when he saw his reflection in the mirror. What he saw caused his smile to freeze. He still looks the same, at least, considering his face and upper torso. The difference is that his forearms were scorched black, his eyes also adopted the same color as wine-red eyes, and he now had a pair of horns stemming from his forehead. As for the lower body though, it was completely different. He now had the lower body of a horse, which explained the additional limbs he felt earlier. Hell, he could even feel the wagging of his tail. By all means, Harold was no longer a human at all. Judging from his transformed state, he was now a centaur. More specifically, a centaur demon. Harold stared at himself for a good while. His thoughts turned chaotic at once, before regaining their calm. What's done is done. He sighed to himself. I made a decision. It's all a little too late to regret it, after all the conversion already happened. Closing his eyes, he discarded the glass, which shattered upon impact with the ground. Harold paid that no mind, of course, he was more concerned about how he would move in this new body of his. Well, as it turns out, he didn't need to worry at all. This new body of his felt like he had it since birth. He could move everything subconsciously just fine. It all came naturally for him, which made him relieved. At least he wouldn't need to spend time relearning his motor functions, since that could prove deadly in a time and place like this. He also just discovered that he's holding a spear. There's also a bow strapped on his back as well as a quiver of arrows attached to his hip. Lifting his spear, he did some experimental thrusts and nodded to himself. This felt natural for him as well. It would seem that being a centaur demon felt natural for him, so there's no need for him to be worried. After checking everything, a small smile appeared on his face. Not bad, I guess. Right, not bad at all. A voice agreeing with him certainly alarmed Harold. Instinctively, he started looking around in search of where the voice came from. But deep down, he couldn't help but notice that the voice sounded extremely familiar. When the realization struck him, he paused. That was when a shadow solidified in front of him, revealing the familiar face of his friend, Cedric, who was now looking at his entire being impassive. His thoughts remained a mystery to the newly converted demon. Oh. Hey, there. Harold, unable to think of how to approach this situation, automatically reverted to how he usually talks with his friend. Man, this is awkward, I guess you caught me, huh? Cedric said nothing. Inwardly, Harold started sweating. The way Cedric seemingly studied every single morsel of his body brought shivers down his spine. It's as if his friend was trying to discover all manner of ways to properly disembowel him. You know, I really, and I mean really, didn't want you, of all people, to see me like this. Harold muttered softly, steeling his resolve. But shit, of course, you'd be looking for me, so I guess I should have seen this coming. Never thought you would succeed in doing so, but damn, here we are I guess. Sorry, dude. Harold shifted his spear, I can't stop here. Know that I never wanted to end this way, but I'm gonna have to kill you here. None of them moved. They just stood there for a good minute, sizing each other up. Even Harold, who just said that he would kill Cedric, just stood still. It's as if he's waiting for Cedric to do something, anything at the very least. Because if he was being honest here, this isn't what he's expecting at all. It seems that Cedric not having any violent reactions to his transformation really threw him out of the loop. Not gonna say anything, huh? Harold scoffed, tightening his hold on his spear. Seeing that Cedric still wore that stoic expression on his face, Harold couldn't take it anymore. His hooves stomped the ground as he began charging towards Cedric, hell-bent on provoking any kind of reaction from the latter. It wasn't until his spear was just about to hit Cedric that the guy reacted. Even then, his reaction didn't amount to much. He merely raised his sword and parried the incoming attack. His face was still impassive, looking as if none of this concerned him at all. And since Harold isn't truly used to his new form just yet, he stumbled upon receiving the parrying blow, causing his huge figure to brush right next to Cedric. Picking himself up, Harold looked at Cedric once more, still wearing that empty expression. This fueled his irritation even more. Harold was starting to think that this man wasn't Cedric at all, it should be an imposter instead. This thought caused him to stop holding back. Whether this was Cedric or an imposter really doesn't change anything in his situation. Harold still needed to kill this man before him to claim true freedom. Clang! 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 Loud and heavy sounds of steel clashing could be heard within the hallway. The venue of their battle was a little too tight for comfort, but it didn't stop these two from fighting. Harold used all means he had to force Cedric into a difficult place. The more they clashed, the more familiarized Harold got for being a centaur demon. He expertly wielded his spear, used his bow and arrows, and he even tried using the sheer advantage and weight of his flesh to push Cedric into a corner. Sadly, to Harold's absolute shock and terror, Cedric just wasn't having it. For all intents and purposes, Harold has yet to do any substantial damage to Cedric. Hell, he'd even go as far as to say that he has yet to touch Cedric's clothes from their clash just now. It was painfully clear at this point that Cedric was just not afraid of him. Not even a little bit. Everything Harold did to him in this form was met with an equal, and therefore neutralizing force. He clashes with him with steel, and Cedric meets him in the middle, blow by blow. He tried sniping him, but the guy just gracefully dodged them, not even coming close to him. He tried adding his weight into his attacks, Cedric takes it head-on, not a trace of discomfort on his face as he does so. Harold never expected Cedric to be this good. Hell, he never even dreamed of it. It was somewhat discombobulating for him since the Cedric he knew was the weak, sarcastic, cynical, and envious guy who was still holding on to life despite failing miserably. Even after his apparent change, the roots of Cedric's attitude and views haven't changed at all. Sure, he knew that Cedric has gotten lucky lately, but that's just it, luck. He never knew that Cedric hid this much strength beneath that attitude of his. So imagine how shocked Harold was at this current moment. These thoughts caused Harold to pause their fight. And thankfully, Cedric also stopped. He stared at Cedric, feeling slightly betrayed and displeased, yet also helpless. Harold realized that, maybe, this wasn't the way to go. Maybe he can use a different approach here. I didn't expect you to be this strong, Cedric. Harold muttered softly. And if Cedric heard that, well, he didn't say anything at all. How about you join me instead, yeah? Harold asked. Yes, this was his idea. Why fight Cedric to a standstill like this? It's of no benefit to him at all. If anything, he's dooming himself by wasting too much time here. Harold knew that the wardens of this shitty hellhole already called for backup. More people will be coming here soon, and if he doesn't hurry up, he will meet his demise here, surely. Besides, from the looks of it, Harold felt that Cedric didn't want to fight him. Why else would he just stand there and all, when he clearly held the advantage in this fight? Harold wasn't blind, Cedric was strong, and if he wanted to, he could kill him right now. But he hasn't done it yet, so this means that he's trying to send a message. We don't have to continue fighting like this. Harold convinced him, I know you like a good brother, Cedric. I know that you too lament on as unfair this fucking world is. I grew tired of it, Cedric. Harold sighed, every single fucking month, we dance at the edge of life and death. All for the sake of survival, for what exactly? A situation that we never wanted to be in? A kind of life that we do not deserve at all? You know it too, dude. This is fucking unfair. But demons, I'm aware that they're bad. Shit, that's what everybody told us the moment we were born. But at the very least, they're honest. They want to subjugate our world, yes, and they will kill humans to do so, yes. But they take care of their own. If we join them, then we will prosper too. I've seen what's on the other side, bro. Harold exclaimed as it was all still vivid to him. We stood no chance at all. The purgatory? Scoffs. They could tear it like paper if they really wanted to. It's meaningless to fight them. They're a force of nature. It's better to go with the flow instead. Unlike being human, being a demon isn't so bad at all. At least, we don't have to worry about the monthly mandatory service anymore. We can grow strong at our own pace, Cedric. Being a demon means being free. Don't you want that too? Come. Let's escape this cruel fate. Join me, bro. An uncomfortable silence descended between them. Harold did his best to convince his friend to join him, despite being unsure and feeling anxious. He did his best to avoid fighting his friends, because clearly, none of them wanted any of this. It would truly make Harold relieved if he could fight alongside Cedric as a demon, instead of fighting against him to death. That's why he hoped, truly hoped, that Cedric would join him and the demon's cause. Sigh. Cedric looked exhausted and aged upon releasing that sigh. He looked down, his bangs covering the complicated look in his eyes. A profound air enveloped his body, causing Harold to shiver with the sudden change. Shank. Harold's eyes widened, followed by his coughing out blood. He looked down at his chest and saw the edge of Cedric's sword protruding from his chest. A wry smile appeared on his face. He then felt movement near him and saw Cedric's shadow appearing right next to him as his body crashed weakly on the ground. Harold's lower body lost strength all of a sudden, causing him to collapse just like that, and Cedric was there, sitting right next to him. His bangs were still covering the look in his eyes. Damn. Harold exclaimed and chuckled weakly, blood trickled from his mouth. Didn't see that shit coming. You're an ass, bro. How did you get so strong all of a sudden? Heh. Harold chuckled and spat some more blood. I guess this was your choice, huh? You sure are an enigma. You say some things that you truly don't mean at all. I hate you sometimes. Ashish, still not speaking to me? Do I look that horrendous to you? I am sorry already, GG's. Don't be, Cedric muttered softly next to him, speaking just loud enough for Harold to hear. Believe it or not, I get it. I really do. I could tell. But you do have the right to be angry at me. I betrayed your trust, after all. I'm not angry, not at all, just sad. I'm sorry, alright? If it makes you feel better, know that I'm not angry at you, too. Not even after what you did just now. Harold lifted his hand, sending a quick pat on Cedric's back, despite feeling his life being drained from his body. He didn't want to corrupt Cedric, so that's all he did, even though he really wanted to at least give his friend a final hug before he departed. I hate this world. Harold softly whispered, and I also hate demons. I hate that I was born unlucky, and I hate that even after working so hard, none of it mattered in the end. That's when Harold saw Cedric looking at him directly in the eyes. His breath stagnated with how sad his friend looked and the sheer mortification his gaze held. A chuckle escaped Harold's lips for the final time as he uttered his final words. Kill more of them for me, and if there's another life after this, let's be brothers, again. And just like that, Cedric lost his only friend in this miserable place. The way he died was the same exact way how his parents and siblings died as well. He was weak then, but he was strong now. Still, he failed, again. And that's exactly why this was even more painful than before. See Cedric. Listen to me, focus. No. Listen. Hide. Find somewhere to hide. Please, no. I can't lose you. Son, this is not the time for you to be stubborn. Listen to me. Dad's got this okay, buddy? I need you to hide until the monsters are gone. I promise I'll find you once this is over. For now, find somewhere to hide. Dad. You're good at that, right? Cough. Why you always win against your buddies whenever you play, so you must be really good at it. Now's the ultimate test to that, you hear me, boy? Amen. Good. Now, run and hide. If we're lucky, we'll each other soon, okay? Go. Quick. If there's another life, let's be brothers, again. Gasps. Cedric's eyes flew wide open as he was startled awake. The familiar ceiling of his prison room greeted him, allowing him to reorganize his thoughts up to speed. He sighed as his head throbbed, painfully being reminded of that awful past. He had thought that he was already past this since he hadn't had this nightmare for a couple of years now, but it seemed that he wasn't over it yet. Harold's death certainly didn't help either. Sitting up on his bed, he rested his back on the headboard. He closed his eyes and tempered his senses down. He didn't want to know what everybody was up to right now, he certainly didn't care either. He just wants to spend time in silence. To mourn for the passing of Harold, his only friend and brother in this shitty place. What irks him about this is that he can't openly mourn for the loss of his friend. To the rest of the world, Harold was the worst. A traitor to humanity. A willing participant of the demon's plan to conquer Prime Earth. The worst scum to ever grace this planet, and so on. He already heard his late friend making the headlines. He even saw some articles about him online. He read and listened to the remarks of the ignorant people outside. They called him names. They spat on him. Criticized and cursed him to eternal damnation. Yes, what happened to the RMC already spread to the rest of the world. But none of that concerned Cedric at all. God knows how much Cedric wanted to defend the honor of his late friend. He wants to justify his actions and tell the world how pitifully ignorant they all were. He wants to call them out for their hypocrisy because they have no idea what it's like to live a desperate life like the rest of them have here. Yet, he truly can't do that. Not that he's afraid of being criticized or having his public image smudged with dirt, he's already a prisoner of this place, public opinion about his existence was already at its lowest, so how can he care about that? He can't call them out because it's just a waste of effort. It's not like arguing with them would bring Harold back to life. Even if it did, the world would certainly not welcome him, it's as simple as that. Harold wouldn't want him to do this in his stead either, so all he could do was silently mourn for him. Even after turning into a demon, Harold was still Harold. His mannerisms, his attitude, even his voice, it was still him. Cedric could tell this much since he was the one who went against him. He's the one who killed his friend to stop the madness. Unless they'd been locked away in his place for years, those people would never understand Harold's decision. But Cedric? He gets it, he really does. He already processed his emotions, and he didn't find any resentment towards his friend for doing this. Hell, he'd even go as far as to say that he completely understands why. Cedric was just not expecting it since, in his eyes at least, Harold was still doing good. His monitoring chip hasn't turned green yet, but given time, it will be. That's why Cedric was confused, since Harold stood a chance. There must be a deeper story here, sadly, I might never have the chance to know. He's dead, after all. He wasn't angry about his friend's apparent betrayal. As he mentioned, he gets it. He understands why. And frankly, if Cedric didn't receive these eyes, he'd probably consider the idea himself. Cedric only ever felt immense sadness about this whole ordeal. Harold was right, Cedric is a cynical and sarcastic guy, he says things that he truly doesn't mean, but most of them are, in fact, the truth. This world was so fucking unfair. The lucky ones get to live comfortably, while those who aren't so lucky must always keep one eye open whenever they sleep since there's always a threat to their lives. Cedric doesn't blame Harold for siding with demons since that's a valid, though immoral, option to survive. Sadly, even though Cedric doesn't blame his friend for his decision, he couldn't just ignore what he did. As much as Cedric hates this world and the life he lives in it, it's still home. Harold bringing with him all those demons caused the population of this place to significantly drop. A lot of people died. Most of them are unresigned, unwilling, and resentful about their deaths. They too were fighting for their lives. Holding on to it despite living in absolute despair, yet they met their demise because Harold decided to side with demons. Hell, he could almost feel the lingering resentment in the air because of how thick it was. He wouldn't be surprised if resentful ghosts start appearing here and there in this place. Cedric wished that it wasn't him. Truthfully, he was waiting for the reinforcements during his fight against Harold, hoping that whoever came to be the one to put down his friend. That way, maybe, just maybe, it would lessen the pain he feels. Sadly though, that didn't happen. Cedric truly believes that his friend isn't a bad guy. He just received unfair treatment from the world, which pushed him to the brink of desperation, and it caused him to cling to whatever means just to survive, to live. That's all there is to it. Sadly, the world would never see it that way. And that hurts more. What makes the pain even worse is that this wasn't the first time this happened. This is the second time that Cedric lost his loved ones because of the demon invasion. The first time was when he and his family were just returning from the Awakening Center. Cedric could still vividly remember being so excited at the prospect of finally getting some training from his father. Yet, on their way back home, they got attacked by a horde of demons. Someone turned into a node right in the middle of the city, causing a tear in space to appear which demons used to infiltrate the place. The savage demons attacked their ride and killed many people. Due to his recurring nightmares, Cedric could still vividly remember it. As soon as their bus got hit, his siblings died. He remembered clutching their unconscious bodies as he desperately cried for help. In his panic, he searched for his parents only to see them gravely injured. His father was trapped under the rubble while his mother was nowhere in sight. He tried to help his father and managed to free him, but he was bleeding heavily. His father then instructed him to hide, to live, promising that he would find him as soon as everything was over. A promise that he had failed to keep. After the incident, he was met with the dead bodies of his family. Only the bodies of his siblings remained intact. His parents weren't so lucky. Only his mother's left arm and his father's skull remained. And that left young Cedric severely traumatized. That image haunted him for years, and by then, he was already deep in his personal hell, which was the only reason why he managed to move on from it. But with Harold's death, everything came crashing down once more. Perhaps it'll be even worse than before. Only time will tell. And whether he likes to admit it or not, he's scared, no, terrified. When his family died, he was weak and that was understandable. He just awakened that day, after all. But now, he's decently strong, yet in the grand scheme of things, it's still nothing. He couldn't save them. Even with the heavenly gift he received, he remains just as weak and vulnerable as he was before. And that scared him a lot. How many people close to him would he lose before he achieves the right amount of strength to protect them? How long would it take? How much must he suffer before finally having a break from this miserable life? As far as he could tell, he had nobody anymore. No family, no friends. Just him and their ghosts, probably blaming him for their deaths. This event was like a cold bucket of water dousing his enthusiasm. Although he could say that he hadn't slacked off the moment he received this heavenly gift, he knew that he could do something more. Never again. More. I need more power, more strength. God knows how much Cedric wanted to defend the honor of his late friend. He wants to justify his actions and tell the world how pitifully ignorant they all were. He wants to call them out for their hypocrisy because they have no idea what it's like to live a desperate life like the rest of them have here. Yet, he truly can't do that. Not that he's afraid of being criticized or having his public image smudged with dirt, he's already a prisoner of this place, public opinion about his existence was already at its lowest, so how can he care about that? He can't call them out because it's just a waste of effort. It's not like arguing with them would bring Harold back to life. Even if it did, the world would certainly not welcome him, it's as simple as that. Harold wouldn't want him to do this in his stead either, so all he could do was silently mourn for him. Even after turning into a demon, Harold was still Harold. His mannerisms, his attitude, even his voice, it was still him. Cedric could tell this much since he was the one who went against him. He's the one who killed his friend to stop the madness. Unless they'd been locked away in his place for years, those people would never understand Harold's decision. But Cedric? He gets it, he really does. He already processed his emotions, and he didn't find any resentment towards his friend for doing this. Hell, he'd even go as far as to say that he completely understands why. Cedric was just not expecting it since, in his eyes at least, Harold was still doing good. His monitoring chip hasn't turned green yet, but given time, it will be. That's why Cedric was confused since Harold stood a chance. He wasn't angry about his friend's apparent betrayal. As he mentioned, he gets it. He understands why. And frankly, if Cedric didn't receive these eyes, he'd probably consider the idea himself. Cedric only ever felt immense sadness about this whole ordeal. Harold was right, Cedric is a cynical and sarcastic guy, he says things that he truly doesn't mean, but most of them are, in fact, the truth. This world was so fucking unfair. The lucky ones get to live comfortably, while those who aren't so lucky must always keep one eye open whenever they sleep since there's always a threat to their lives. Cedric doesn't blame Harold for siding with demons since that's a valid, though immoral, option to survive. Sadly, even though Cedric doesn't blame his friend for his decision, he couldn't just ignore what he did. As much as Cedric hates this world and the life he lives in it, it's still home. Harold bringing with him all those demons caused the population of this place to significantly drop. A lot of people died. Most of them are unresigned, unwilling, and resentful about their deaths. They too were fighting for their lives. Holding on to it despite living in absolute despair, yet they met their demise because Harold decided to side with demons. Hell, he could almost feel the lingering resentment in the air because of how thick it was. He wouldn't be surprised if resentful ghosts start appearing here and there in this place. Cedric wished that it wasn't him. Truthfully, he was waiting for the reinforcements during his fight against Harold, hoping that whoever came to be the one to put down his friend. That way, maybe, just maybe, it would lessen the pain he feels. Sadly though, that didn't happen. Cedric truly believes that his friend isn't a bad guy. He just received unfair treatment from the world, which pushed him to the brink of desperation, and it caused him to cling to whatever means just to survive, to live. That's all there is to it. Sadly, the world would never see it that way. And that hurts more. What makes the pain even worse is that this wasn't the first time this happened. This is the second time that Cedric lost his loved ones because of the demon invasion. The first time was when he and his family were just returning from the Awakening Center. Cedric could still vividly remember being so excited at the prospect of finally getting some training from his father. Yet, on their way back home, they got attacked by a horde of demons. Someone turned into a node right in the middle of the city, causing a tear in space to appear which demons used to infiltrate the place. The savage demons attacked their ride and killed many people. Due to his recurring nightmares, Cedric could still vividly remember it. As soon as their bus got hit, his siblings died. He remembered clutching their unconscious bodies as he desperately cried for help. In his panic, he searched for his parents only to see them gravely injured. His father was trapped under the rubble while his mother was nowhere in sight. He tried to help his father and managed to free him, but he was bleeding heavily. His father then instructed him to hide, to live. Promising that he would find him as soon as everything was over. A promise that he had failed to keep. After the incident, he was met with the dead bodies of his family. Only the bodies of his siblings remained intact, his parents weren't so lucky. Only his mother's left arm and his father's skull remained. And that left young Cedric severely traumatized. That image haunted him for years, and by then, he was already deep in his personal hell, which was the only reason why he managed to move on from it. But with Harold's death, everything came crashing down once more. Perhaps it'll be even worse than before. Only time will tell. And whether he likes to admit it or not, he's scared, no, terrified. When his family died, he was weak and that was understandable, he just awakened that day, after all. But now, he's decently strong, yet in the grand scheme of things, it's still nothing. He couldn't save them. Even with the heavenly gift he received, he remains just as weak and vulnerable as he was before. And that scared him a lot. How many people close to him would he lose before he achieves the right amount of strength to protect them? How long would it take? How much must he suffer before finally having a break from this miserable life? As far as he could tell, he had nobody anymore. No family, no friends. Just him and their ghosts, probably blaming him for their deaths. This event was like a cold bucket of water dousing his enthusiasm. Although he could say that he hadn't slacked off the moment he received this heavenly gift, he knew that he could do something more. Never again. More. I need more power, more strength. The wardens are watching the convicts more closely than before, everyone could feel their solemnity, and that was enough for most of the troublemakers to lay low for now. They didn't want the ire of the wardens to come crashing down on them after all. This isn't to say that the convicts were oppressed. They still have some form of freedom, allowed to roam the vicinity of the center's territory. However, the management imposed a curfew on them and they had to follow, or else, they'd be punished. And even if the wardens could be stricter than this, some of them didn't have the heart to do that to these people. The incident was certainly eye-opening, and just like most of the prisoners here, the wardens are also aware of what everybody who's been here went through. They'd never admit this out loud, but deep down they sympathize with the fate of the convicts. They're disappointed that someone decided to side with the demons, but honestly? None were surprised. The wardens could see that the convicts looked less energetic than before, and they could understand why. The sudden invasion forced them to face how fragile their lives were. It's a crisp slap that awoke them to their reality. And because of their current situation, fear was starting to creep even closer to their hearts. It's no surprise that the atmosphere within the center became much more solemn and dire compared to before. And nobody, not even the wardens or the chief warden himself, could change this. If there's someone who refuses to wallow in this kind of atmosphere, it would be Cedric, who, despite losing a friend and being under close observation, still continued to train as his life depended on it. Well, in hindsight, it kind of does, doesn't it? The curfew and stricter security hardly affected his training regimen. He still went out during the day to practice his sword and cultivated the White Lotus core technique during the night whenever he didn't feel like sleeping. Cedric was using every moment he could to increase his strength. He wanted to become more stronger now than before. In his mind, he's really getting tired of crying about the unfairness of this life. He's tired of letting the world dictate how he lives. He's tired of losing the ones he loved, all because he wasn't strong enough to protect them. He'll be damned if he still doesn't do anything about it with the gift he received. That's why he's pursuing a grand path for himself. One that would allow him to control his own life, not wanting to let anybody interfere with it anymore. That being said, he still has a long way to go. He already theorized the best way for him to grow. It's still not complete, but for his immediate future, he already had everything planned. Cedric's already establishing a path that would give him the perfect foundation for his future endeavors. It is nearing its completion, so he just needs to have more patience. Cedric was just about to return to his room, when all of a sudden, someone stood before him, blocking his path. He raised his head and met the gaze of the warden. Due to his sharp senses, he could immediately tell that the warden was somewhat wary of him. His sharp memory allowed him to gain some notion as to why this man felt this way. As far as he could remember, this man witnessed Cedric's act of raising through clusters of beast demons, reaping their lives like wheat. The ease and swiftness with which he did so was certainly eye-opening, freakish, even. And he truly couldn't blame the man for being wary of him since, if he could do that to those demons, then who's to say that he couldn't do the same to him? "What's up?" he asked. And he could have sworn that he saw the man flinch every so slightly when he spoke. "The chief warden wishes to talk to you." The warden spoke, trying his absolute best to be neither servile nor overbearing with his tone. He didn't want to offend this man, after all. Cedric was slightly surprised about that. He wasn't expecting that the chief would call for him. He didn't show his surprise though. Instead, he merely nodded and gestured for the man to lead the way. Then, they made their way toward the chief warden's office. Upon entering, Cedric was immediately greeted with an unexpected sight. The chief warden was currently at war, with paperwork, it seems. The man was mumbling things that the rest couldn't understand, but Cedric could. "Death to paperwork, death to paperwork, death to paperwork." He chanted this phrase over and over again as he went over the mountains of paperwork on his desk. Cedric prevented himself from reacting. Instead, he just waited for what will come next. "See, Chief." "What?" "Eep." Cedric looked at the guy next to him incredulously. His senses didn't fool him. This guy was indeed the one who let out that scared squeak just now. Before the warden could even say anything, he was interrupted by the chief who had already seen Cedric. "Oh, so you're here." The chief regarded him with a huff, he then turned to the frightened guy and said, "All right, scram now you." "Sir, yes sir." The guy didn't even excuse himself to Cedric, which was rather rude, but meh, it was fine. Cedric's just a convict anyway, he doesn't deserve that kind of treatment. "Sit." The chief looked at him briefly before ordering and returning his attention to the mountains of documents on his desk. Cedric followed obviously, and the office became silent after that. The chief called him here, but he had to talk to him yet, leaving Cedric alone with his thoughts. "The AC's nice at least," he muttered inwardly. His room doesn't have an AC in it, so during the daytime it's hot and cold during nighttime. Though the shift in temperatures doesn't really bother Cedric much, especially now that he's changed, it would be nice to have it uniform. Sadly, that kind of luxury wasn't meant for a convict like him. Ugh. Fucking losers, blaming me for something that's out of my control, humph. Cedric blinked, but he refrained from commenting. He just watched as the hulking man suddenly raised his head and finally paid attention to him. Unexpectedly, the man just rolled his eyes at him, which nearly made Cedric gawk in disbelief, thankfully though he caught himself before it happened. The chief then stood up and went to the nearby coffee machine to brew some for himself. It was then that he suddenly talked. Cult of the Demon Saint. That's the name of the people that corrupted your friend. Cedric wasn't expecting this. Here he thought that the chief invited him here to interrogate him because he was close to Harold. It seems that he had a different idea in mind. They've been around for a while now, but they're very low profile. So much so that we don't have much intel about them even though it's been years since we first caught their activities. Their whole ordeal was to apparently enlighten humans, luring them to a false sense of belief that should they convert themselves into demons, all their misery and plight would disappear. They brainwash people, making them believe that by becoming demons, they would become divine beings with everlasting lifespans. The chief finished brewing his coffee, so he returned to his desk. He's even nice enough to give Cedric a cup as well, which he obviously graciously received. And they managed to hack the monitoring chips? Cedric asked tentatively. Huh, you're a sharp one. The chief grunted with a raised brow. He took a sip of his coffee and nodded. Yes, they did. Nobody knows how they do it, though. And that's why my supervisors are chewing my ass out recently. In Cedric's mind, the cult's means were certainly threatening. If they could hack the monitoring chips, preventing the authorities from getting an accurate read on them, then they could certainly cause too much chaos in human society. Sounds unfair, Cedric replied, taking a sip of his coffee. Right. The chief scoffed in disbelief. Those sons of bitches couldn't spot it themselves if they were here, yet they have some gall to reprimand me? How ridiculous. Humph. Either way, what I'm trying to say here is that your friend isn't entirely the one to blame here. The chief continued, matter of fact, the appearance of nodes is becoming frequent in many other RMCs out there. On one hand, it's bad news, because many convicts are dying. On the other hand, it's good news since the more frequently they do this, the more chances we get to analyze their methods and figure out how exactly they're hacking the chips. I don't know if I'm supposed to be worried or relieved by that. Both or neither. The chief shrugged. I don't particularly care about what you feel anyway. Cedric was mildly speechless, but in all honesty, he wasn't surprised. Chief Brightstone always struck him as a man who just couldn't give a fuck about what others think of him. This isn't to say that the man was rude and obnoxious, no. The old man was just really honest and a bit crass, but he's a good guy. The fact that the old man told him that Harold wasn't completely at fault for what had happened was already proof of that. He didn't need to go out of his way to call him here in his office for that matter anyway, yet he still did. Ignoring the last bit, Cedric sighed and said, we might think that Harold was just another victim, but others don't see it that way. Well, fuck them. The chief scoffed in disdain, causing Cedric to smile wryly. Boy, I'm old enough to be your grandfather. I've seen and heard all types of shit in my long-ass life, believe me when I say that the public's opinion doesn't amount to shit in the grand scheme of things. Since you've been stuck here, I'm sure that it's already painfully clear to you how ugly and miserable this life is. Most of those parroting idiots haven't experienced even a fraction of what you lot had been through. They see the world in rose-tinted glasses due to the sheer fact that they've gotten lucky. The chief scowled, have them face a real demon and I'm sure that they'll soil themselves before they could even plea for their lives. The chief's words were heated. He wasn't merely saying those words to comfort him, his tone has a basis, but that's a story for another time. Still, the mere fact that he showed fiery displeasure upon saying those words made Cedric think that the group of people he was talking about might have been really terrible. Possibly even beyond his imagination. Anyways, learn to ignore them. Words are just that, words. It won't be anything else unless you make them so. I'll keep that in mind. Cedric nodded to show his agreement. Right, another thing, the chief took another sip of his coffee before continuing, take this. He then hands him a mask that has holes in his eyes and mouth. Cedric frowned, but he still took it. Unable to help himself, he inspected it using the system. Asterisk. White mask, T3. A plain-looking mask that helps the user hide their feature. It also prevents skills/abilities that discern that user's identity. Asterisk. Not that I'm ungrateful for this, but the stunt you pulled during the invasion will certainly catch their eyes. The chief interrupted him. Hell, I wouldn't be surprised if they're already investigating about you. After all, you did play a big role in thwarting their invasion. Surely, they're not pleased with what you did. Not by a long shot. A grimace made its way to his face. Right, Cedric certainly forgot about that matter entirely. He forgot that the demons are using every means they have to collect intel about humans. They're surely profiling those who show enough talent, and if they could, they would nip them in the bud before they blossom into a real problem. Because of his carelessness, not wearing anything to hide his features, and all of that, he probably already provoked their ire. The chief was right, it'd be a miracle if he was still unknown to them at this point. The same goes for the cult as well. You better start learning how to act. The chief commented in amusement. I'm quite sure that they will start sending scouts in your hell dives to learn more about you. The more you fight, the more you'll reveal yourself to them. The more intel they have on you, the easier it'll be for them to kill you. That's, of course, assuming that you maintain your clearance rate of your hell dives. Cedric felt a headache coming. This wasn't good at all. Because of his carelessness, life had just become even more of a bitch to him. This should help, for a bit at least. Thank you, I'll use it well. Cedric replied with difficulty. Right, the mask could only buy you time. It's not a permanent solution. Well, it's up to you to find it, so good luck I suppose. The chief snorted in amusement. Thanks a lot, I guess. Cedric replied with some snark. You're welcome. The chief teased, well, that sums it up. You're doing well in terms of recovery. Continue that and you might just become a miracle for the people here. Cedric was confused, but it seemed that the chief wasn't in the mood to clarify things for him. Also, you don't have to return to your prison cell. If you want to, you can just build a temporary residence anywhere within these walls. You have enough demon souls to sustain yourself anyway, so feel free to do that. Can I really? Cedric was surprised by that sudden offer. Yes, you can. The chief nodded, so long as you continue to behave like you've always been, we won't have problems. I also know that you value your privacy, but of course, you'll be monitored still since you remain within these walls. This is just a little bit of freedom I can give you in exchange for saving my useless brats. So that's why. Cedric nodded inwardly. Still, this was good news to him. With this, he could have more space to maneuver. If he's being honest, being stuck in the prison cells was starting to become stuffy for him, especially after Harold's death. Harold was his only friend here, and now that he's gone, Cedric couldn't see himself making connections with others. He will still be monitored, yes, but that's to be expected. This wasn't a deal breaker to him, so he'll gladly take the offer. If that's the case, then thank you, sir. I can certainly use some space. I know. The chief replied, anyway, that's all I called you here for. You may now scram. Cedric smiled wryly before standing up and bowing at the chief. Bidding his farewell, he exited the office and made his way out of the building. Silence permeated within the chief's office once he left, creating some semblance of peace before it was interrupted by the sudden appearance of an unknown person who sat on the same seat Cedric used previously. So? How was he? The chief asked the newcomer. Needs to work more on his poker face, but overall not bad. The man who just shimmered into existence uttered. He also shamelessly helped himself to the remains of Cedric's coffee before wincing at its flavor. Ack. Too sweet. What did you put in this, diabetes? Too sweet, my ass. It's the perfect ratio, bitch. And did you just seriously drink on a used cup? You're fucking creepy, you know that? The chief glared at the man. It's part of the investigation. The man at least had some decency to look ashamed after that was pointed out. It helps me learn more about him. By what? Tasting his spit? That's fucking disgusting, you and I both know that. Plus, you're almost as old as me. The kid's not even 25, so yes, you are fucking creepy. Do you want to hear my thoughts about the kid or not? The man was incensed and it shows. For what it's worth, the chief just snorted at the man's outburst before asking, lay it on me, then. He's clean. The man sighed and then rubbed his face at the implication of his words. I mean. He's not a spy, nor he's brainwashed by the cult. He's perfectly sane, well, as sane as any person who's been here for years, that is. If the chief released a sigh of relief after hearing that, neither commented about it. After all, both of them had an image to maintain here. Also, he spotted me, so there's that. The man smiled ever so slightly at that. The chief raised a brow in surprise and said, "You mean to say that you, Arishem Romanovaya, one of the slimmest and creepiest assassins this city could offer, have been spotted by a tier 1 LV.2 brat like him? You sure you're not senile yet? Shut the fuck up. Slimiest and creepiest, my ass. You're sullying my fucking reputation." The man now named Arishem glared at the chief. "I'm not senile yet, bitch. And I didn't slip up either. The kid's senses are just way too sharp." "Really?" "Yes. Really?" Arishem snorted. He was paying attention to every nook and cranny of your office, without so much of an effort on his part. "It's insane, honestly. I almost couldn't believe that he's only tier 1 LV.2. Huh, you got all of that from tasting his spit? Can you fucking stop emphasizing that part?" Unbeknownst to these two, Cedric heard their entire conversation, and the face he was making right now looked certainly uncomfortable. Unfortunately, he couldn't just march back in there and protest since that would reveal his cards even more, and he's not specifically ready for that talk just yet. Even so, Cedric agrees with the chief that this Arishem guy was really creepy. Profile. Name, Cedric Stormrider. Age, 21. Race, human. Class, Tier 1, Swordsman. Level, 2. Titles, Junior Undead Slayer, Scholar, Sword Child. Aptitude. Body, S. Energy, S. Spirit, S, locked. Tier 2 REQ. Final rating, S+. Skills. Actives, Sword Key LV.7, Kickboxing, M. Passives, Vision, M, Learning, M, Key Mastery LV.7, Smell, M, Multitasking, M, Taste, M, Touch, M, Listening, M, Intuition, M, Footwork, M, Recovery, M, Tolerance, M, Tactics, M, Deception LV.3, Willpower LV.3. Mandatory task. Hell dive, survive the endless undead horde for 3 hours. Rewards 100% demon soul gain, clearance streak +1. Punishment for failure, failure streak +1. Record, clear streak 3, failure streak 0. Staring at his status board, Cedric sighed dismissively. Despite his, admittedly, glamorous stats, Cedric could already sense that he was approaching the limits of his growth. This isn't to say that he's complaining, no. Of course not. He's extremely grateful and satisfied with his overall growth so far. He had achieved feats that not many could boast about. Hell, it wouldn't be surprising if he turned out to be a unique existence by now. With an S+ rating for his overall aptitude, in addition to new skills, deception, and willpower, there's really not much he could squeeze out from his potential without leveling up and undergoing tier advancement. Well, he could look for other ways to increase his arsenal/expertise. Like say, learning how to craft something, maybe studying another language, looking into other hobbies that might interest him, and so on. But in terms of explosive combat force, he's already nearing the limits of what he could have. At least for a LV.2 swordsman, that is. Yet even though he could clearly advance his strength by a large margin through simply leveling up, Cedric didn't feel like doing so. What he pursued was the perfect foundation. Something that would set him apart from the rest. He wants to excavate every ounce of potential his body had, perhaps even go beyond it. He wasn't interested in fame, glory, wealth, etc. Those would follow him eventually anyway. What he wanted out of this was power. True power to ensure that he could survive in this cruel world and take control of his own life. True power to make a change. But he clearly still has a long way to go. So that means no rest for him. It's been roughly a week since Chief Brightstone called him into his office. Since then, Cedric lived like a hermit within the walls of the RMC. He had built a simple hut around the area where he usually trains, claiming the spot as his. He didn't show himself around the other convicts since he wasn't interested in knowing anybody anymore. Despite feeling lonely every now and then, Cedric was quite fond of the silence he received, all thanks to the small amount of freedom he was given. As expected, none of the wardens troubled him for doing this. They were informed about his unique status and only observed him from a distance. Cedric obviously knows this since he can sense them. His fellow convicts weren't aware of this arrangement though. That's because nobody told them. And even if they were told, it's not like they could do anything about the chief's decision. They're not that brave or stupid to question their jailers. Besides, nobody comes around this area anyway, so Cedric wasn't entirely worried about his privacy. While his temporary home might look shabby from the outside, it wasn't that bad on the inside. He wasn't lacking in furniture since he was practically a millionaire in terms of demon souls. Hell, everything he ordered for the house barely made a dent in his savings, so really, he had no problems at all. Besides, Cedric has never been used to luxury. Well, considering his current status, it'd be surprising if he did. He's already grown used to a simplistic way of living. His house didn't have any electricity, but that's fine with him. He's not one to use that many electronics anyway. The things he used had batteries in them which he could simply order online once they ran out. Overall, it's peaceful, quiet, and slightly lonely. Compared to the sheer madness that this place had, his place was practically heaven. With his living conditions secured and more comfortable, Cedric was now facing a new problem altogether. In fact, it's the sole reason why he learned the art of deception. Demons are once again proving to be a pain in the ass for him. When he realized why the chief had given him the mask, Cedric had been searching for a method on how to solve this problem. He doesn't know how much the demons knew about him, but the sheer fact that they will now be watching him closely made him incredibly uncomfortable. Honestly, in the grand scheme of things, this isn't surprising. It shouldn't be. After all, it happened multiple times already. Demons are always watching. Consistently collecting information about notable humans that could pose a threat to their nefarious plans. With the cult's appearance, their source of information grew even more, and honestly, it's terrifying. Once the demons assessed the threat level of a person, they would make plans for them. If possible, they will eliminate the budding talents to lower the chances of humanity's morale. They will stoop low, that's for certain, they're demons after all, and they're at way, so it's all fair. Sometimes, it's very easy to forget that humans and demons are still at war because of the peaceful environment around them. If it weren't for the hell dives, Cedric wouldn't have guessed that they were at odds at all. And that's precisely why he's trying to be cautious. Cedric was training to survive. If he had already registered himself under their radar, then that's the complete opposite of what he's trying to do. The mask he was given wasn't a solution, only a temporary stopgap. Hell, it's already questionable whether it would work or not. This mask would only cover his facial features, not his entire body. It wouldn't conceal or transform his physique into something else. It wouldn't hide the way how he moved or conceal his skills. Depending on how much the demons knew about him, this mask may or may not already be useless. That's why he's searching for another way to divert the demons' attention away from him. He planned on putting up a show, something he learned from the art of deception. If he's already being monitored, then there's not much he could do about that. What he can do, however, is to control how much he will show to them. Cedric planned on slowly tapering off. He will show his face in hell dives, continue clearing it and, as time passes, slowly show that he couldn't keep up. Showcasing just enough strength to barely clear the task with so much difficulty. If they see that, then they will slowly but surely conclude their judgment of him, eventually diminishing his real threat and leaving him alone completely. That being said, there are a lot of flaws in this plan. Mainly the fact that he'd be purposefully failing his hell dives. If he goes through with this, he will also be slowing down his progress a lot. And that's something that he's very reluctant to do. He couldn't accept that he would have to tone down his personal growth just to escape the demon's scrutiny, mainly because it had to be convincing, and the demons aren't dumb. One slip up and they will realize that he's hiding his strength, and while Cedric is confident about his skills, who knows what other methods the demon has to discover his secrets? Yes, he knows that that's probably for the best since it's only a small sacrifice to ensure that he lives, but he just didn't like that idea. Remember, Cedric had grown this much in just a few months. It hasn't even been half a year since he had received these blessings, yet he already possesses this level of strength. If he went through with this plan, he'd be delaying his growth so much that, he just knew, he'd regret it. Knowing this, he could only think of other ways to do this, but so far, he didn't have any idea where to start. That's the dilemma he's facing right now. Thankfully though, he still has some time left. On the next hell dive, he will show himself still. He would showcase as much strength as before. He would still be under observation and he wouldn't be able to prevent it, but at the very least, the demons wouldn't move on him just yet. That would buy him enough time to search for other options. So that's to say that he would be using the plan he made for now at least, right until he finds a more pleasing solution for this problem. Suffice it to say, for now at least, nothing has changed. He has a lot in mind, but he had time as well. Of course, he wouldn't stop training even while searching for a possible way to solve his problem. He still has some room to grow, and the sooner he reaches his limit, the earlier he could start leveling up. He just hoped that he could find a solution soon, because his anxiety wouldn't let him be at peace with this problem at hand. Hordes of manic zombies ran towards Cedric, hell-bent on devouring his flesh. There were so many that they almost formed an actual sea. Their movements were erratic but frenzied. They tripped and fell, but never stopped pursuing him like moths attracted to fire. For the record, it's not like Cedric was being idle. He was moving. Sword flashed as he carved a path through the hordes of zombies coming his way. It's just that there were too many that spawn at once that, even with his frankly absurd killing rate, he's still being mobbed. Believe it or not, he's forced to face a horde of nearly 500 zombies, all spawning at once with each passing minute. The majority were ordinary, others were mutated. This hell dive started 30 minutes ago, yet it already reached this point of madness. Frankly, anybody who sees this wave would have doubts about their survival. Not Cedric though. His body blurred, disappearing like a ghost. When he reappears, and only briefly whenever he does, several zombie heads would either explode or become detached from their bodies. His longsword was covered with a thin veil of bluish light. It looks underwhelming, but make no mistake, it's that same energy that allowed him to slice through hordes of zombies like a hot knife through butter. By now, Cedric was already covered with filth and grime from all the zombies he killed. Sadly, there's just no time for him to relax or wipe it off since there's always a trail of zombies behind him. They didn't know the meaning of exhaustion, so Cedric always had to stay alert. Amidst the regular zombies were the mutated ones. At this point, there's at least one of each type harassing him through whatever means necessary. Try as he might to target them first, the sheer number of ordinary zombies throwing themselves at him made that challenging. Still, Cedric refused to be stopped. He never stayed in the same spot for more than a second. He roamed the battlefield like a wolf unleashed on a herd of sheep. How many stepped forward was also how many died. Cedric was intent on killing every single one he encountered since, even a single one's value was low, a demon soul was a demon soul. Cedric wasn't broke, demon souls wise. Hell, he still has millions in his savings simply because he didn't need much to begin with. That being said, he's no idiot who would refuse a, practically, free demon soul. With his speed, it's hard for the zombies to keep track of him. Only mutated ones could react to him and find him in time. Alas, this only applies this early on the run. The zombies he faced evolve in strength, speed, and numbers the longer he's here, so it wouldn't take long before they become even more challenging than they are right now. Covered in his light but sturdy armor, Cedric had some level of defense going for him. While his goal was to, preferably, not be touched by any of the zombies at all, he truly couldn't dodge everything. Yes, even with his supercharged senses and evolved physique, he couldn't. Still, his armor was still intact. He had only suffered from a handful of blunt attacks since the start of the hell dive, so he's still fine. Cedric was also wearing the white mask that the chief gave to him. Its purpose was to prevent anybody from discerning his facial features, and he could tell that it was working his magic thanks to his senses. He had to hand it to the demons, they know what they're doing. While he's aware that, at the very least, someone from many hordes of the zombies he killed so far was sent as a spy to gather intelligence about him, he wasn't able to clearly differentiate them from the others. And yes, this is also the case even with his absurd senses. These demons are way too cunning. They had the means to silently and effectively spy on humans without being found out. It's very irritating, but he's helpless against it. He was the one that fucked up, and now he had to face the consequences of his careless actions. Still wondering if the mask was even a need at this point, Cedric continued wearing them anyway. Better be safe than sorry. Even so, however, he did try his best to showcase a level of strength that seemed convincing for his performance. Frankly, Cedric could go much faster than this. He could kill more efficiently and more quickly than this. but he purposefully held back for the sake of deceiving the enemy. Alas, he still hasn't found a reliable way to solve his problem, but for the most part, that's still okay. With his level of performance, he shouldn't be too eye-catching for them just yet, just worthy of attention, nothing more. He could still continue his act without damaging his rate of progress, and each time he succeeds, he's only bringing more time to himself. Taking a deep inhale of the putrid air in purgatory, Cedric winced due to the sheer odor, yet underneath that, he could also feel his pulse thrumming under his skin. His ki billowed within his body, coursing like raging water through his bloodstream and making him feel alive. Despite the sweat running down on his face underneath the mask, and how his back felt drenched, Cedric didn't feel exhausted just yet. He could feel his body on metaphorical fire. He remains fast, deadly, and silent throughout the battle. He charges with the sword in hand, completely unafraid of the horde coming his way. I should probably start looking for AoE skills. He muttered to himself as soon as he was finished decimating another cluster of zombies with minimal action. In all honesty, the only sword skills he possessed as of currently were nothing more than the combined basics of sword wielding and his ki. Cedric didn't have anything that he could use to kill enemies in larger groups with one attack. Don't get him wrong, his method was still effective. While it might be the only thing he could rely on for now, it's sufficient at the very least. It gets the job done so you won't hear him complaining. Besides, even though he wanted to learn more skills, people are stingy, you see. Nobody would sell AoE skills for tier 1s since that's reckless and nobody could buy them. Well, a few tier 1s who are born to a rich and lucky family could. So could he since he's a millionaire, but again, nobody sells them in the shop. If they do, they'd target the stronger market first, tier 2 and above. It's a shame really, but there's nothing he could do about it. Swing. Swing. The sound of his blade cleanly slicing off or poking zombies' heads continued. Cedric brandished his sword with machine-like precision as he decimated hordes of zombies in his wake. Just then, he felt another probe going off but didn't react to it. He maintained his pace, seemingly not sensing anything while in truth, it was as clear as day for him. Sadly, he just couldn't track where it came from, so even though he wanted to take them down as a priority, he couldn't since it's only a fruitless endeavor. The mask once again did its thing though, and he could have sworn that he almost got a reaction for that, but that might have just been his imagination. Either way, he continued his slaughter. Time passed by and soon, the first 2 hours and bosses of his hell dive breezed past him. Somewhere along the run, Cedric lost count of how many zombies he had killed. His entire being was soaked in all sorts of dirt, grime, bits of flesh, blood, etc. Even with the mask on, his face was still dirted by them. Hell, he might have ingested some things that splattered on his face at one point, who knows? Cedric got so absorbed in his vendetta against the zombie horde that he had relinquished all other thoughts that had nothing to do with killing zombies. His many thought chambers focused on a singular task. He had but all stopped caring about the probes toward his real identity at this point. With the horde continuously evolving, it reached the stage where Cedric could safely stop holding back since it was no longer necessary. In fact, it would be detrimental if he did so, since he's risking failure. Not only did the hell dives become more harder the higher his streak goes, but it's also evolving in real time. Truly a seemingly impossible task, but Cedric nevertheless pushes on. Cedric's focus was so sharp that he almost had a whiplash when the final boss appeared. A giant zombie unceremoniously appearing out of thin air would probably do that to anybody. Thankfully, Cedric didn't take too long to recover his focus. And so, after clearing the rest of the zombies as well as the final boss, light engulfed his entire body as he disappeared from purgatory, appearing on his hut within the walls of RMC. Still panting from exhaustion, Cedric heaved his body towards the nearby creek, completely missing the fact that his monitoring chip has now turned green. The chief wants to talk to you. Cedric blinked after hearing that. If he were to be honest, he wasn't expecting that at all. In his mind, he didn't think that he did anything that would warrant the chief's attention, so it was surprising that he'd want to talk to him now. Give me a moment. He replied nonetheless, still thinking about what prompted this all of a sudden. The warden arrived as soon as he was done bathing by the creek. He wasn't even properly dressed yet, so he asked for some time to clothe himself at least before going with him. After changing into a fresh set of prisoner uniform, he stepped outside of the hut and nodded to the warden, who then led him toward the chief's office. On their way, he could feel his fellow inmates whispering about him. Normally, he would already know what that's all about, but right now, his field of senses was off. By off, he meant that it's suppressed to the bare minimum, almost to the normal levels. The reason behind this is to prevent sensory overload, which could happen, especially when he's exhausted. He just got off from his hell dive after all, he hadn't had proper time to rest aside from his time relaxing in the bath. He's still relatively low on energy, and he didn't want to overload his senses, so he suppressed them. The warden didn't follow him inside, he just motioned for him to enter, so he did. As soon as he entered, he was greeted by the cold air within the office thanks to the AC, causing him to visibly relax. He then saw the chief, still waging war with paperwork on his desk. Smiling to himself, he knocked on the door, despite being inside to catch the man's attention. The chief looked up at him and groaned. He then motioned, with his head, towards the chair in front of him. Cedric bowed slightly and made his way to his seat. Just like before, the chief doesn't seem too keen on talking to him right away. His attention was focused on the documents he was reading, sporting a deep frown on his face whilst he did so. Cedric didn't mind that. He instead just relaxed inside the office and basked in the peaceful silence in there. I could fall asleep here, he thought, fighting back a yawn. After a couple of minutes, however, the chief grunted out loud, catching his attention. He then signed the documents he was holding and placed them right next to a smaller pile on his desk. It was then that the chief finally regarded his presence by looking at him and asking, "So? What are your plans now?" Cedric blinked. Then he blinked again. He stared at the Chied, trying to process what he meant by saying those words, but he couldn't. "I'm sorry?" "You heard me, brat. What are your plans now?" Chief Brightstone stressed. Cedric was confused, obvious by the appearance of a frown on his face. He doesn't have any idea what the chief is talking about. "Don't tell me you, really? You haven't noticed it yet?" "Sorry, am I supposed to notice anything?" Cedric asked, still confused. "Oh Lord, this is rich." "Huh." The chief snorted in laughter. "And here I thought your senses were supposed to be sharp." Cedric frowned deeper as he carefully released his field of senses. He didn't release it at its maximum capacity, just enough to sense his surroundings. Still, even with that, he didn't discover what the chief was telling him to notice. "I'm not on your nape, brat. See it for yourself." The chief interrupted. Cedric raised a hand to clutch his neck, he even warped his sight to see what the chief was referring to, and when he did, his eyes widened in realization. "Oh. Yeah, oh." The chief droned, causing Cedric to feel slightly embarrassed for only discovering this now. There on his nape was the monitoring chip that is now releasing a vibrant green light. Meaning that he, like all of those lucky ones outside of this forsaken place, had turned into a regular person. One that no longer has to be worried about their monthly mandatory service, because they could clear it just fine. Realizing this caused Cedric to feel awed by the passage of time. As it turns out, this has been the 7th month since his life has changed. For a refresher, someone who had been considered a risk, a person whose monitoring chip turned red because of their constant failure to clear their hell dives, to recover their civilian status, they'd need to clear their hell dives successfully for 6 months straight, turning that chip to green once more. Cedric spent a month building his foundations after receiving his eyes. The month after that, he cleared his task and it continued until this very day, when his own monitoring chip finally turned green. "No wonder I was receiving those stares," he murmured loud enough for the chief to hear. "Right, 'cause what you achieved, in their eyes at least, was practically impossible. But seeing you with on, that myth was busted. Congrats, boy. You're a star now." The chief snorted as he rested his back on his seat. "But what do you mean when you ask me about my plans?" Cedric innocently asked. "Are you fucking? Boy, do you not know what that green signal represents?" "No, that shouldn't be. You must be fucking with me." The chief was outraged. It turned green? Alright?" Cedric was still confused. "Oh, dear Lord. You are nuts." The chief looked at him in disbelief. "Seriously? You don't know? Or did you just forget?" "You know what, fuck it. Whatever. You're free, boy." The chief stressed out, looking a bit miffed by having to constantly explain. Green means you've regained your civilian status. You can now leave this place and be amongst your people. Cedric blinked. Then he blinked again. Then a rush of uncertainty flooded his mind, turning his thoughts chaotic. Well, shit. I can't believe I forgot about that. Cedric whispered, looking embarrassed even more so than before. Right, out of all the things he forgot, it'd be this. He really wanted a hole to crawl into right about now. For someone like him who used to say that he had a sharp memory, this was certainly embarrassing. How can he forget about this? Unbelievable. Now that his monitoring chip has turned green, it means that he will be regaining his freedom soon. He no longer had to be cooped up within these pesky walls. He could leave and rejoin civilization as a free man, living the kind of life that he had always wanted. It wouldn't be wrong to say that he's now getting his second chance, or he could continue living after so long. But instead of celebrating this idea, Cedric found himself stumped by this sudden freedom. Second chance? What's that? Forget about receiving a second chance at life, he never had one to begin with. His life had been miserable since he awakened as a superhuman, so what chance exactly are they talking about? Continue living? Would it really matter where? All Cedric knew was within these walls. He'd been here since he was at the tender age of 15. This is all he had. Plans? What plans? Hell, the reason why he didn't get it for the first time was because he was already convinced that he'd remain here for the rest of his life. Yet now, all of a sudden, the chief calls him to his office and asks him what he plans now that he's a free man. How can he answer that? What do I say to that? Cedric mused inwardly, still shell-shocked from the sudden revelation. He never thought this far, to be honest. Again, he's been here since he was 15, completely convinced that he'd be stuck here for the rest of his life. Everything that he knew outside were things he saw and heard of online and on television. To him, the outside world was almost a myth, even though that's where he came from, before ending up here. Even with his sharp mind, memories of his youth were already blurry to him, buried by the many memories of his despair and loathing about his situation. He truly doesn't know what to think at the very moment. Well, I've seen this coming. The chief slowly sighed after seeing Cedric's reaction. Deep down, he felt pity for the kid. He had read his file, memorized it, even. He knew that the kid had been here for years. He had already forgotten what it's like to be free. So now, faced with this foreign status, the child has no idea what to think of it. Oh well, in any case, I'm sure you'll figure it out. I already have your documents. You can only stay for 3 more days here. The chief didn't miss the sudden burst of anxiety emanating from Cedric, causing him to sigh inwardly. I can't stay here. No, absolutely not. The chief's words were direct and final, causing Cedric's expression to crumble. Suffice to say, Cedric isn't in proper mental headspace right now. The revelation he received so far was just too shocking, and he's too exhausted to keep up. Even the idea of him staying here instead of enjoying his well-deserved freedom was a spur-of-the-moment thing. He wasn't really thinking properly, that's why he blurted that out. Of course, it didn't help that the chief ruthlessly denied his request, but he could hardly be blamed for that. Come on, kid. Get a grip. Take some deep breaths and analyze what's currently happening. I know you're still tired, but this conversation couldn't be delayed since I'm busy. Chief Brightstone instructed. Cedric took a deep breath to center himself. He closed his eyes and pondered deeply, realizing shortly that he was indeed panicking. He initially thought that he was above this since he had the willpower skill, but it turns out that it doesn't work like that. Nevertheless, he managed to get a grip of himself. Realizing that he was being hasty here, he regained some clarity in his clouded mind, enough to get some ideas as to why his previous offer was turned down mercilessly. You good? The chief asked. Yeah. He nodded in reply. Great. I'll tell you why you can't stay here. The chief continued. Well, the main reason is that your potential is wasted in this shitty environment. That got Cedric's attention at once. Like I said, boy. I've read your file. I know what you're going through. The chief paused before sighing. Actually, no I don't. But I have an idea at the very least. The sheer fact that you're here, sitting in front of me, alive and well, means that you're far from a pushover like the rest out there. The chief stated, not only did you manage to hold out this long, you even regained your civilian status, despite how difficult your hell dives were. That means that your skills are the real deal. Kid, this isn't where you belong. The chief shook his head softly. You've known this place like the back of your hand. You've experienced the madness, desperation, greed, and corruption that drowns this place. I don't want you to rot here. The chief stared directly at him, trying his best to send his genuine words across. Staying here will only hold you back. You have so much potential to be, and I'd hate to snuff that just to keep you here. The world is big, explore and live, boy. Don't waste your youth here. I'm not sure if they'd even want me there. I have nowhere to return to. I have no one, period. I just don't see the point. Cedric muttered loud enough for the chief to hear. Chief Brightstone grimaced upon hearing the vulnerability in the child's voice. He inwardly cursed since he's not an expert at handling things like this, but he figured that he had to since he just couldn't let this kid rot here. Don't let that stop you, boy. The chief uttered softly. You don't have to return there per se. You can just start a new one. Start a new chapter of your life and make it memorable. I won't say that it'll be easy, but it's much better than staying here, that I'm sure of. Start a new life out there? A broken man like me? Do I even deserve that? Cedric bit his lips in indecision. What's broken cannot be fixed, he said, to which the boy winced, but that only applies to items and other things out there. You're not an item, boy. You still have a chance to heal. You won't find it here, so you must brave the world outside of these walls. The chief looked at the boy who was contemplating right now. He sighed in lament, seeing how miserable the boy felt about himself. This place really got to him. He might have staved off the madness, but the despair permeated deep into the boy, causing him to end up like this. It's this part that the chief hated about this place. Anybody who stays here long enough will turn into lesser husks of themselves, due to their environment. The chief had always hated to see how it broke all manner of men that arrived here. Much worse, kids like this one. You will receive help, of course. The chief continued, causing Cedric's attention to return to him. It's pretty obvious that you're not yet ready to socialize. I'm sending you to a rehab facility, specialized for handling people like you. It's free of charge, you won't spend a dime on any counseling or courses that will help you improve. Of course, you'll need to provide for yourself, but you'd obviously understand that. Cedric looked pensive about the idea, but not in a negative manner. In his mind, he recalled some information about that, and if he were to be honest, it doesn't seem like a bad idea to start. I guess that's my next destination then, Cedric replied after a while of deliberation. Good. I'll arrange a meeting for you. I just need your signature here, and here. The chief then handed him a stack of papers, which he signed shortly after. Of course, he read the documents himself and didn't discover anything shady about them. This isn't to say that he was suspicious of the chief. He's just being careful, since these are legal documents. It's never been a bad idea to be thorough about those. Once he signed the papers, the chief gave him some more advice and did his best to placate Cedric's still turbulent emotions. After that, he sent him away because he still had mountains of paperwork to wage war with. Cedric didn't overstay his welcome. As soon as he stepped outside of the office, he turned into a blur and returned to his humble abode. He did this to avoid the attention of other convicts, he didn't want to deal with them right now. Back in his hut, Cedric groaned and dropped face first on his mattress. He stayed like that for a couple of minutes, before switching positions. Staring at the ceiling, he wondered if that just really happened. Well, kind of too late for that since he already signed his release papers, but still. He truly didn't know what to feel about his sudden freedom. Normally, it should be celebrated since, well, he's gonna be free of this place. No more madness, no more harassment from fellow convicts, never been a problem to him but whatever, no more close inspection from the authorities, and so on. But like he confessed earlier, is there even a place for him out there? He had truly doubted it simply because he would never be ridden by what he did. His status of being an ex-convict of the RMC will always remain with him. It will stay on his public profile forever, and for others, that's enough to change their opinion of him. Cedric was never under the illusion that it would be happily ever after once he got out of this place. He was not expecting to be welcomed with open arms upon leaving this place. Hell, even if that was the case, he wouldn't want it. It's just daunting, to say the least. For others, starting a new chapter of their lives might sound exciting, but not for Cedric for some reason. He just doesn't see the point, you see. By all means, he is young, especially considering how long the superhuman lifespan was. He is really young. It's partly the reason why he doesn't rebuke the chief whenever he calls him kid, brat, or boy. 'Cause for a man of that age, Cedric truly is that young. That being said, even if he's young, Cedric has been exposed to the ugly side of humanity. Hell, he'd even say that he's neck-deep in it. He had seen the worst part of it, and that obviously warped his perception about their kind in general. He wasn't the most optimistic guy out there. Nobody who shares the same experiences with him ever would. So he truly wasn't convinced that life out there would be any better. Still, that's where he'll end up next. He already signed the papers for it after all. He's gonna go under rehab first, but that's to be expected. Speaking of which, he also has mixed feelings about receiving therapy since he really didn't need anyone telling him that there was something wrong with his brain. Of course, he knew, duh. But since he didn't need to pay for it, he might as well cooperate. After all, who knows? Maybe that's just the thing he needs to face in this new chapter of his life. Closing his eyes briefly and spreading his senses ever so slightly, Cedric sighed shortly after. Despite everything that this place did to him, he just knows that he will miss this place. Whether he'd like to admit it or not, this place has served as his home for years, and it'd be a lie to say that he didn't get attached to it. Alright, that's enough sentimentality for today. I'm tired now, I need some sleep. Today's the day. Cedric took a deep breath after ending his meditation. He glanced outside to see the first few rays of sunlight peeking through the horizon. Deep down, he felt weirdly nervous for some reason. The mere idea that from now on, his life will change provokes a feeling of hesitation in him. Despite that though, he knew that this was bound to happen, so he could only accept his fate. Knock. Knock. Cedric stood up to answer the door. He was then met with a warden who briefed him about their schedule. According to the chief's order, they'll leave at 9 a.m., so he still has a few hours to himself. The warden also told him that he no longer had to wear his prisoner attire since he was technically a civilian now. After receiving that, the warden left and Cedric tended to his needs. He ate his breakfast courtesy of the meal plan, bathed himself, and wore a fresh set of clothes he ordered online. Nothing too fancy, just a loose white shirt, a pair of jeans, rubber shoes, a black jacket, a cap, and a face mask just to look presentable. Still, with how much he changed during these past few months, even this simple attire almost made him look like a supermodel. Used to how he looked like by now, Cedric merely shrugged upon seeing himself in the mirror. After spraying some perfume on himself and deciding that he looked presentable enough, he stepped out of the hut that had served as his temporary home. Looking at it and the RMC building for a good while, Cedric saw his life here flashing past his eyes. He couldn't help it, as weird as this might sound, this has been his home for a couple of years now. He doesn't know if he'll miss this place or not, but it won't change the fact that he was one of the desperate people who lived in this place. That's something that will never change. It's also something that he will never forget. The chief, along with a couple of wardens, saw Cedric's melancholic look, but they did nothing to stop him. They allowed him to bid farewell to this place in his unique way. After a couple of minutes, they heard him sigh and turned to them. His gaze met them and they saw him nod. Without a word, the chief turned around and started walking towards the gates, followed by the wardens and Cedric as well. Once they arrived at the parking lot, the chief paused, and so did the rest. He then turned to Cedric and said, "Well, kid. This is it." Cedric sighed to himself, feeling the weight behind those minuscule words. "I'm afraid I can't accompany you to the rehab center, because I'm needed here. If I leave, I'm sure the other brats here will cause chaos." The chief snorted at that. "That doesn't mean that I'm not sending you an escort. These people here will come with you, additionally." Swoosh. A man appeared seemingly out of thin air, wearing a hooded suit with a camo design. Talk about an entrance. Cedric mused inwardly. The man had violet-tinged eyes, grayish hair, pale and slightly wrinkled skin, sporting a clean-shaven stubble, and a stern expression. He looked to be as old as the chief, but smaller and on the leaner side. "See that? He's not surprised at all. I told you he knows that I'm here." The man sounded like he was whining at the chief when he said this. To that, the chief just snorted. Cedric on the other hand was moderately weirded out, but he didn't dare to show it on his face. Anyways, you might have seen him before, or not, I don't particularly care. But this is Erisham Romanovaya. This old skank will be escorting you to the nearby city till you arrive at the rehab center. Erisham looked like he was about to complain when he heard how he was referred to by the chief, yet he didn't after Cedric silently but politely acknowledged his presence. Well, at least he still has some manners. Erisham muttered, if I hadn't seen you in a prisoner's attire before, I would seriously believe that you aren't somebody from here. That is a compliment for Cedric, but also a direct insult to the rest of the convicts here. Cedric only smiled wryly at that because he really couldn't think of a way to refute it. Bah. Whatever. Get on the convoy and get moving. We don't have all day. The chief snorted and the rest scrambled. The chief then walked closer to Cedric and said, here are your files. Keep that secured at all times. Never, and I mean never, ever give that to someone without them showing their license/proof of authority first. That is the proper protocol and procedure. Got that, kid? Yes, sir. Cedric nodded after receiving the documents. When you have the time, read everything that is written in there. If you could memorize the entire thing, even better. But if you can't be bothered, like 90% of the population does, you can just memorize the highlighted parts on your documents. Trust me, you would need it. The chief then patted Cedric's shoulders. The latter nodded and kept the chief's words in mind. While the rest already got in the vehicle, they noticed that Cedric still hadn't done so. They were starting to wonder if he was hesitating due to the look on his face, and he does, but for a completely different reason. What's wrong? One of the wardens asked, catching the attention of the rest, including the chief and Erisham. Is that guy on the trunk coming with us? Thump. Fuck. The suspicious guy cursed in pain and shock after being thrown. It literally only took a blink of an eye for Erisham to move and fetch the suspicious guy from the trunk of the vehicle and throw him on the ground. Cedric was able to follow the movement but not fast enough to react. Shit. How did you even notice me? The guy groaned in despair and unwillingness. His expression then turned into fright when he sensed the chief walking towards him. Of course, the wardens were shocked by that. They were sweating since none of them sensed the presence of the man, which was obviously their fault. They even shivered when they felt the chief's gaze roaming past them briefly. Then they thought that even the chief and Erisham didn't discover the man, so this shouldn't be taken against them. On the other hand, though, they were surprised by how Cedric managed to see what all of them missed completely. The chief looked annoyed, Erisham did too, but his amusement prevailed more than anything. Biting on his cigar, the chief crouched down, picked up the guy by the collar, and threw him in the direction of the building. Not caring whether the guy survived or not from what he just did. A loud crash and cry of pain and surprise later, the chief turned towards Cedric and said. Case in point. He huffed a smoke, good catch, by the way. Cedric could only smile wryly. He's worried about what happened to the guy that just got thrown, but at the same time, it was none of his business. It was the dude's fault anyway. He noticed that the wardens were once again, double-checking their vehicle, intent on seeing if there was another one they missed. Cedric could confirm that there was none since his senses couldn't trace anyone, but he figured that he'd just let them do their jobs. Cedric didn't want to be the reason for their unemployment after all. After the security check, which cleared across the board, Cedric finally hopped in and made himself comfortable. It didn't take long before the engines hummed to life. He also heard the unmistakable sound of walls opening. Taking one last look at the RMC building and the chief, Cedric let out a sigh and settled down on the back seat of the vehicle. Then, off they go. The vehicle he's in was escorted by two more, one in the front and the back. Erisham, for some reason, was sitting on top of the car as they moved. Cedric could tell that the old man was in stealth while he was there. He's weirded out by that at first, but he decided to ignore it. Shortly after that, they made their way out of the facility. And for the first time in years, Cedric finally saw what the outside world looks like. Looking past the window, he saw the unmistakable and breathtaking view of the Blue Jewel Valley. Aside from the paved road and a few cell towers here and there, the rest of the valley was untouched by mankind, letting nature take its course and preserving the wildlife around here. He had seen animals that he hadn't seen in person for so many years. Deers, snakes, salamanders, boars, etc. Cedric also notices the sheer difference in the air he breathes around here. It's purer and more natural, unlike what it's like behind those giant walls. The mere fact that there were no signs of desperation, madness, and cruelty in his immediate surroundings made Cedric subconsciously look forward to what the nearby city was like compared to the RMC. It is 100 kilometers long, 20 kilometers wide, and 1.5 kilometers deep. It housed all manner of flora and fauna. According to history, many people were fond of this place, making it a famous spot for various activities all year round. The valley wasn't spared from the invasion, however. It took humanity a lot of time and resources to restore its nature and make it habitable again. Even then, it's never been the same. Nowadays, the Blue Jewel Valley serves entirely as a spot to contain the convicts of the Risk Management Center. It wasn't the only one, of course, but it's one of the largest branches out there. The whole valley serves as a trap for any possible outbreaks. It's also far enough from the nearest civilization, so it gained its purpose. Inside the vehicle, Cedric looked outside to see that they were about to leave the valley. The distinct infrastructure of the RMC has long vanished from his sight. It's also way outside his field of senses. Still feeling a little nostalgic and nervous about this whole thing, Cedric could only sigh. There's nothing else for him to do other than to look forward to their next destination. Well, he could technically distract himself by surfing online. Neither the wardens nor Erashem seemed to have any interest in speaking with him, so he could just do that instead. But Cedric didn't do so since he knew himself. I'm feeling quite anxious. There's no way I'd be able to focus on anything. I might as well sate my curiosity by observing the journey. Cedric mentally remarked. His multitasking skill wasn't helping with this either. It doesn't work like that. If anything, he would say that it's even making it worse. Cedric could also meditate, but again, he's not in a proper mindset to enter that state, so it's useless. That's why instead of trying to see if there's anything else he could do, he just stuck on observing the journey towards the destination. This way he could, at the very least, recall the road the way they took. Cedric continued looking outside until he discovered that they were out of the valley completely. They're still following the paved road, and Cedric uses that opportunity to unfold his field of senses completely. That's when he saw their next destination, the Black Thread City. The Black Thread City was one of the cities under the Vulbane Kingdom. It is named after a unique material, black thread, that has once been the unique product of the city. The city has lost the monopoly over black thread, but the name stuck around ever since. And despite its old name, the city itself looked futuristic. Even from a distance, he could see the towering buildings and all manner of scientific inventions all over it. He's even starting to sense the sheer hustle and bustle of the city from where they were. Despite being under the jurisdiction of a royal family, the real authority that governs everything falls under the Earth Federation. The Vulbane imperial family technically owns the city, but they don't manage it alone. Well, more like they couldn't. They needed the government's support for that. Cedric knew this, because of his musings online. It's public knowledge at this point, so he was able to access this information, despite having a low search authority. As the convoy neared the city, the more antsy Cedric got for some reason. They hadn't even entered the city yet, but he already felt overwhelmed by the sheer things that were happening within. Even his numerous thought compartments were having a difficult time keeping up with everything. But he's adjusting though. It's just a bit troublesome for him, since he's not used to this level of activity. Sure, his fellow convicts at the RMC were rowdy, but not to this extent. He had already sensed hundreds of people even before they entered the city proper, and that's not even a portion of them. That being said, he's adjusting. Quickly, too. The wonders of his enhanced and disciplined perception were working their magic to help him with this. Cedric also discovered that the city was walled as well. However, compared to the security of the RMC, the city's security was more lax. They're probably not expecting any attacks to happen, which resulted in this. Either way, that's none of his business. The convoy then arrived at the city. They got stopped by security, which included personal inspection too. He noticed the looks that the guards threw at him when they discovered that he was an ex-convict. It was subdued, but he didn't miss it. In any case, he didn't mind since he was already expecting something like that to happen. Erashem remained hidden. He's meditating on top of the car he's in. Cedric knew that the old man knew what was happening, he just couldn't be bothered to show himself, so he stayed like that. After getting the clear from security inspection, they continued on their way to the city, and that's when everything sunk in for Cedric. Oh boy, this is really happening. He's feeling anxious again. There's just too much happening and he's not used to it. This level of activity was something that was out of his comfort zone. Cedric was used to and loved his solitude. Years and being used to loneliness taught him to love the silence and serenity it brought. Now, however, he's forced to accept the reality that this is where he'll be for the foreseeable future, and if he were to be honest, he still doesn't know what to feel about that. Unfortunately, the wardens absolutely couldn't care less about his rising anxiety. They just wanted this task to be over, so they continued on their way towards the heart of the city. On their way there, Cedric carefully inspected the people under his field of senses. He gauged their strength and so on, and he concluded. The civilians live near the center of the city while the superhumans are scattered on the outskirts. That may be the reason why the security of the city was lax. With the superhumans close to the gates, they could respond immediately to outside threats, allowing them to protect the civilians. The city hall was at the very center of the city, and that place should be filled with experts, so there's no reason to doubt its security. Such an arrangement should be on purpose, and I can't say I disagree with it. Cedric mused. Either way, this is just his opinion. It doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, only serving as a minor distraction from his real concern, which was their final destination. The Renew Life Institute. We're here, boy. Arisham's voice sounded in his ears. So they're admitting me here? Man, I must have impressed the chief, then. Cedric mused as he got out of the vehicle. The Renew Life Institute was one of the most famous medical corporations in the world. It started as an initiative and grew to its current heights within mere years. Rumors said that the founder of this institute was also one of the founders of the Lifestyle Guild, but again, that's just that rumors. In terms of medical care, however, this place was the real deal. At the same time, their services were on the more expensive side, which balances it out. Still, the fact that Chief sent him here meant that he had left a favorable impression on the old man. Not gonna lie, I'm feeling the pressure here. He mused inwardly as he followed Arisham inside. When they arrived at the reception, Cedric was greeted by the bright scene inside. The smell of sanitation and medicine lingers in the air. He could feel some kind of buzz around the area too, which made him curious. Hello, gentlemen. How can I help you today? One of the nurses who was tasked with receiving patients greeted them. Hello to you too, Mississippi. This is Cedric, he's on parole as of 3 days ago. I believe he had been arranged for a meeting? Arisham said. Alright, let me check my list here, give me a moment. The nurse then opened her database to check the admissions and returned to them shortly. Cedric Stormrider, yes? Yes, that's right. This time, it was Cedric who answered. Great. You're just in time. Congratulations, by the way. The nurse smiled sweetly at him. Second floor, room 205. Look for Dr. Vega, she'll be assisting you for today's checkup. Cedric thanked the lady and turned to Arisham, who just shrugged at him. Quit shaking on your boots, boy. You aren't in purgatory. I'm sure you can do this on your own. Rolling his eyes at the old man, Cedric sighed and made his way to the elevator, which then took him to the second floor. In there, he could see several patients and visitors going to and from. He didn't mind any of them, he instead proceeded to the room that the nurse pointed out earlier and knocked on the door before opening it. Yes? I'm sorry, is Dr. Vega here? I was instructed to come here for a checkup. Oh dear, that's me. Come in so we can begin. Dr. Vega guided Cedric through the physical exam and the psychological exam. On both exams, the psychological exam took the longest, requiring him to spend at least 2 hours talking with the kind doctor. The physical exam was short, thanks to the state-of-the-art equipment they use courtesy of the Lifestyle Guild. In short, you're as healthy as one could be, physically. I dare say that you're one of the healthiest people I've ever come across for someone at your level. This is a good thing, so I'd suggest that you keep doing what you're doing so far to maintain this. Dr. Vega started. Psychologically, though. Dr. Vega gave him a look that he completely understood even without having her finish her words. Your long-term stay at the RMC took a great toll on you. I assume that you've seen this coming, yeah? Cedric nodded to that, not bothering to lie to the good doctor. He saw Dr. Vega sighing as she continued. The good news is, this isn't the worst-case scenario. In fact, I'm astonished that, despite being exposed to all of that, its effects only did so much to you. Yes, it has taken a toll on you mentally, but compared to the rest, you are relatively sound, mentally. I've had other patients like you before. None of them stayed in the RMC for as long as you did. None were as young as you did. That said, they had to be admitted here wearing a straitjacket, so believe me when I say that you have a high chance of recovering, quickly too. But of course, that will depend on your willingness. Dr. Vega enthusiastically remarked. Well, Cedric couldn't really say anything to that. He personally knew how harsh the RMC was to others, so he believed her words. It didn't feel good to know that there was something wrong with him psychologically, but hey. He's already expecting that. Actually, it would be surprising if the results turned out positive. What should we do then? He asked. Oh, nothing much. Just therapy sessions at least once a week. I might suggest some activities that might help you improve your mental state and so on. From your results, you shouldn't need medications. If there are developments though, then I'm sure to let you know. This brings us to our next topic, which is the matter of your living conditions. The good doctor adjusted her glasses before speaking. You're not required to stay at the institute for close observation. If you want to, you can stay anywhere you please so long as you make sure to visit me during our scheduled sessions. Like what was mentioned to you by Chief Brightstone, you aren't required to pay for our services, so at the very least, take advantage of that. Don't worry, you won't be abusing the Chief's kindness through this. If anything, I'd think that he'd be happy to hear that you're using it to its full extent. I understand. Great. Here's your record. Please bring this with you during your visits since we will be updating that. Also, this is a great way to check your progress from time to time, so don't lose it, okay? Cedric nodded to that. The two of them then exchanged some more words, but it was mainly the good doctor giving him some advice here and there. She was truly helpful and Cedric could tell, so he did his best to remember everything she said. After that, he was free to go. When he returned to the first floor of the institute, he saw Erashem, who initially wanted to catch him by surprise. Suffice it to say that it failed since Cedric spotted him before he could even do anything. Man, your senses are quite troublesome. Am I really that sloppy? Erashem grumbled to himself. Cedric wisely decided to keep quiet instead of answering that. He'd say that his senses were just a cheat and that the old man was good, but that would be telling too much. Anyway, what's the verdict? He asked. Cedric then gave him a rundown of what Dr. Vega said, and Erashem looked pensive for a moment. Well, that's great to hear. A bit surprising, but still great nonetheless. Erashem looked at him from top to bottom, causing Cedric to slightly raise a brow. Yeah, you don't need my help in looking for a place to stay, he declared, causing Cedric to be speechless. Meh, you'll be fine on your own. You're a big boy. Here. Erashem then gave him a piece of paper which made Cedric confused. That's my communication ID code, CIC. He said, get a COM plugin and add me. Don't spread it around. Burn it after adding me. Send me a message once you have the plugin installed and only contact me in case of emergencies. Got it? Cedric nodded and stored the paper in his inventory. After giving him that paper, Erashem bid his farewells and left him to his own devices. Anxiety swarmed through his chest once he realized that he was alone. It was then followed by a sense of loss. Cedric had no idea where to go from here and he was panicking. Thankfully, he was able to catch himself. He took a deep breath in and pushed his anxiety down while making his way out of the hospital. Get a grip, Cedric. He admonished himself inwardly. You can face literal hordes of zombies without flinching in fear. Integrating back into society should be nothing to you. Releasing a breath of air and looking at the towering buildings within the city, Cedric started to plan ahead. The priority is to find a place to stay. A hotel should be fine for a few days while I look for a more suitable home for myself. He mused inwardly. Additional objectives include buying a COM plugin for the system, buying more clothes, toiletries, and other essentials, familiarizing myself with the city by traveling to places, and socializing. Not looking forward to the last part, but it's necessary. I think I need friends, getting laid might also help. Ugh. Walking around the streets with his field of senses on, Cedric was rediscovering what it's like to be with people. Being able to walk around this freely without being overly observed was somewhat refreshing. It feels weird, but it's the good weird kind, if that even makes sense. He could feel some lingering stares at him, but that was mostly because of passing curiosity more than suspicion. In a way, it is also refreshing for him to be ignored for the most part. When he gathered enough courage to ask around, he got directions on where the nearest plug-in store was at. After thanking the kind lady, he made his way there next. Plugins are unique system functions that have been developed by the Lifestyle Guild. Its main purpose is to add more functions to the Aquila system. This method was discovered by one of the known founders of the Lifestyle Guild, Alexis Desmond, the technomancer dubbed as the Tech God. Plugins could be many things. They could either add a communication function to the system, like the one that Erishem suggested him to have, or they could also add gaming/entertainment functions too. There are a lot of plugins to choose from, but Cedric didn't need that many. Only a select few would do. It wouldn't be too late to add another once he needed it anyway. On a side note, plugins aren't sold through the system shop. Everyone who would like to have some would have to visit a physical store to have them installed by licensed technicians. Said technicians are professionals and signed a binding contract with Aquila to never install any harmful or corrupted plugins to their customers. Cedric arrived at the plugin store, which was thankfully near the Renew Life Institute. He went through a verification process, which included him presenting his identification documents. He recalled the chief's words about the protocol. The store representative did present their license and authority insignia first, before asking for his. After going through the process, Cedric was then free to choose several plugins. He asked for suggestions, and the store clerk was all too happy to give him some. Ultimately, after a long and exhausting list of selections, Cedric chose 3 plugins: communication, entertainment, and educational. The communication plugin allowed him to have a profile he could use to send direct messages to people. He could even create a group chat, do calls, etc. The entertainment plugin included lists of apps he could use to either watch movies, stream, play games, build an online presence, and so on. The default system already has a few of these functions, but this plugin elaborates on that even more. And finally, there's the educational plugin. It's online learning/schooling in simplified terms. He could also take courses online through this plugin, so he's looking forward to it. After having these plugins installed courtesy of the technicians and adding, as well as saying hi to Erishem through chat, Cedric felt ready to conclude his first day at the city, so he checked into the nearby hotel and called it a day. A week passed since the start of Cedric's new life at the Black Thread City. By now, he could say that he has somewhat adjusted to the life of a normal civilian. This week had been refreshing in many ways, and it opened his eyes to just how different it is compared to being stuck within the walls of the RMC. The sheer toxicity within the RMC's environment really did a number on him. Even though, by all means, he's already a civilian, Cedric still felt that he didn't belong here. That being said, he had worked hard for this chance, so there's no way he's wasting it. He's still staying at a hotel, by the way. The week flew by unknowingly since there was just too much to catch up on. He didn't have time to hunt for an apartment. Luckily, he had no shortage of money, or else he'd be homeless by now. Despite being in a new environment, Cedric didn't forget about his training. He'd been doing it for so long that it has been integrated into his being, and he doesn't feel at ease if he didn't do it. While he might be in a different place and had to adjust to it, it wasn't an excuse for him to neglect his training. By now, his progress has slowed down considerably, but it's still moving at least. On that note though, thanks to the educational plugin he had installed with the system, he was able to discover answers to things that he had been curious about. The one thing that struck him the most was how absolutely broken learning was. See, because he struggled with his monthly mandatory service, he never had the chance to enroll in a superhuman academy. Sure, there were courses online, but they didn't cover everything. Additionally, they are expensive too, and for a struggling man like him, he couldn't spare demon souls to enroll. That's no longer a problem anymore though, and with the educational plugin, his access to online courses became richer. He could browse for hours, and he wouldn't run out of things to study. Back to the subject at hand though, thanks to the learning skill, he had learned and mastered Superhuman 101, the basics of superhumans and the world they live in, Enochian, which is an ancient language, and the several mundane subjects like modern science, physics, mathematics, history, etc. He quite literally breezed through those courses like a gust of wind. Hell, at one point, he even tackled two subjects at once, which wasn't hard at all, thanks to his multitasking skill. Within a short week, he has surpassed the educational level of about 80% of the population of Blackthread City. He wasn't a certified genius just yet, but he'll only need time to get to that level. Speaking of skills, he now has an answer as to why people couldn't abuse the mastered LV.10 learning skill. It's because, to them, it doesn't exist. Well, the learning exists, but not as a skill. It's a perk instead, which grants them 20% increased experience when leveling up their skills. It's different for Cedric, who had it as a skill that could also level up to 10. It's even more ridiculous that he got it at that level right from the start. Similarly, the sensory skills such as vision, smelling, hearing, tasting, and feeling, well, they exist in some form but not like how it is for him. For example, the vision skill appears to others as eye of insight, mana eyes, spiritual eye, dark vision, etc. Sure, they might appear as a skill and be leveled up to 10, but they're still quite different from what Cedric has. His vision skill was the embodiment of those skills packaged into one. And frankly, at its maximum level, those skills can't just compare to what he has. This also applies to his other skills. For Cedric, this meant that he had unknowingly turned into a unique existence. Not a lot of people could easily, or possibly, repeat what he just achieved. In short, he's an anomaly. And that didn't really make him happy. He's already under close observation, courtesy of their demonic neighbors. He didn't want more attention to him if he could help it. Thankfully though, it seems that nobody was bugging him about it yet. This gave him the idea that, so long as he kept it to himself, he could still pretend to be just another man out there. The educational plugin answered many of his questions so far, and he's really thankful for it. With the well of information he had access to, he could plan his future according and solve his problems one step at a time. As for the entertainment plugin, it's also useful. He has been having fun with it, allowing him to unwind and relax. He had also caught up with recent releases in games, movies, etc. It's a good way to pass the time, especially whenever he doesn't feel like sleeping. The communication plugin was the one that got the least use. While it offers a lot of functions in terms of communication improvements, Cedric doesn't have that many people to chat with, so he didn't use it a lot. He had some contacts in there, yes. There's Erishem, who he only contacted once so far, and that's it. Aside from that, there are the official CICs of the authorities which the plugin comes with, and 2 unnamed contacts of girls he had slept with so far in his stay here. What can he say? It wasn't his fault that he was hot. Their one-night stands though, Cedric made that clear before they did anything. Also, they're the ones who approached him, not the other way around. So, in short, he had spent his first week studying, getting used to his new environment and freedom, having fun here and there, and getting therapy. Yes, he had his first therapy session and it went, well. Dr. Vega just encouraged him to talk about things. She asked very random topics and listed her analysis while being attentive to him. It felt nice and refreshing, but not life-changing. Well, that's to expected. After all, mental healing never happens overnight. Dr. Vega did say that he was doing well so far. She encouraged him to go out and experience more of what the city could offer. Cedric wasn't quite knowledgeable in psychology, so he just decided to listen to her. After all, the doctor was nice to him. Right now though, he's on his way to hunt for a new home. He had been in contact with some realtors, and he filed for a visit to one of the properties that fit his requirements. Because of the unique arrangement of properties within the city, he's heading to the outer area of the city, not that far from its protective walls. He's registered as a superhuman, and since he's new here, these are the properties that he could either rent or own. Upon arriving there, he was met with the agent he was talking to, and they immediately began their tour. The property was rather large, and the offer was nice. The only downside is that the place was in dire need of reconstruction. Yes, reconstruction, not renovation. You see, this lot had been ownerless for quite some time now. For some reason, people tend to ignore it after seeing it once. It wasn't worth its price in their eyes. According to the agent, this place suffered from the last invasion that happened to the city, and that was nearly a decade ago. Since then, it stayed like this, and again, nobody wanted it, which might also be the reason why. It's cheaper than what Cedric initially guessed. The remains of the house were decrepit, the walls had been reduced to rubble, shrubs grew wildly around the area, and overall, the place was just undesirable, which was exactly why Cedric barely hesitated to buy it. Weirdly enough, he could somehow relate to the state of the house, if that even makes any sense. He's going by instinct here, and so far, that hasn't failed him yet. Cedric had seen other properties before this. All of them were nicer and fancier compared to this, but none resonated to him like this one did. So, he took that as a sign and bought it. He didn't stop there though. He also asked the realtor to hook him up with construction workers, which the man was more than happy to do. He listed his requirements right then and there, even going as far as giving the realtor a generous donation to make sure that the project was finished as soon as possible. After signing claiming ownership of the plot of land, he gave a good look before leaving. Of course, he gave his CIC to the realtor to contact him whenever he needed to. According to the man, it would take 2 weeks up to a month before the construction of his new home was done. That means that he'd have to stay in the hotel for now, and that's fine. Once they were done with that, they parted ways, and Cedric returned to his hotel room to relax. Profile. Name, Cedric Stormrider. Age, 21. Race, human. Class, Tier 1, Swordsman. Level, 2. Titles, Veteran Undead Slayer, Scholar, Sword Child. Aptitude. Body, S+. Energy, S+. Spirit, S+, locked. Tier 2 REQ. Final rating, S+. Skills. Actives, Sword Key, M, Kickboxing, M, Iron Skin, M, Multi-Stab LV.3, Air Hop, M. Passives, Vision, M, Learning, M, Key Mastery, M, Smell, M, Multitasking, M, Taste, M, Touch, M, Listening, M, Intuition, M, Footwork, M, Recovery, M, Tolerance, M, Tactics, M, Deception, M, Willpower, M, Education LV.3. Mandatory task. Hell Dive, survive the endless undead horde for 3 hours. Rewards 100% demon soul gain, clearance streak +1. Punishment for failure streak +1. Record, clear streak 6, failure streak 0. Asterisk. Cedric just got done training for the day. He rested inside his hotel room, wiping off his sweat as he stared at his enriched profile page. I've truly grown since then. He mused to himself, feeling pleased about his progress. If people were to witness the sheer difference between his stats then and now, none of them would dare to disagree with his claims. The results were plain to see, it's undeniable and it shows. With how much undead he killed so far, the Undead Slayer title evolved from junior to veteran. It gave him increased intimidation against the undead, making them easier for him to deal with. Skills-wise, he had grown too. He had long mastered the usage of Sword Key, or just Key in general, meaning that he had full control over it. He could fully adjust its output. He also refined it to the utmost degree he could handle right now. Not even an ounce of it would be wasted due to his sheer mastery over it. This, however, doesn't mean that he had an inexhaustible supply. What shows in his profile is his skill, not the quantity he has. Mastering the skill doesn't mean that he magically had oceans worth of it. As for his new active skills. Iron Skin. A defensive skill that provides an additional level of protection to the user. Depending on the user's mastery of this skill, the protection it provides varies. Mastered, when active, the user's skin becomes as tough as an iron plate. Multi-Stab. A basic skill refined to its utmost degree. This skill represents the user's mastery over the basic swordsman skill, Stab, which they could perform multiple times in a row at a pace that transcends the norm. Current record, 5 stabs in a second. Air Hop. A mystical footwork skill that allows the user to step on air. This skill could only be learned by those who have access to special energies, ki, mana, spiritual energy, etc. Asterisk. Iron Skin was something he bought at the systems shop. He figured that, since the challenge of his hell dives was rising sharply in conjunction with his growth, having an additional layer of protection wouldn't be a bad idea. With this skill, his defenses essentially skyrocketed. His physique was already refined to an absurd degree. Add this skill and his tolerance passive, Cedric could now shrug off most of the attacks that tend to be dangerous for him before learning the active skill. With the Iron Skin skill, he could take his time walking off the acid of the spitter zombie, tank a direct hit from brute zombies, shrug off the explosion of the boomers, and so on. This skill can evolve, but its evolution depends on the user. From what Cedric could recall, the next stage was the Iron Flesh, followed by Iron Bones. There were more iterations of this skill as well, such as Bronze, Silver, Gold, Obsidian Crystal, Platinum, etc. As for the multi-stab, that's something he learned on his own. It appeared during one of his practices, where he was refining his basic skills to the utmost degree. He vaguely recalled entering a trance-like state then. After that, he was awoken by the sudden alarm from the system. See, Cedric has never been a fan of fancy/pompous skills. To him, simple was best. He isn't into theatrics, he believes that the most effective skills are the ones that kill the enemy before they could even do anything about it. The multi-stab skill might not sound fancy enough, but with his mastery over it, even brute zombies, ones that arguably have the toughest flesh in all undead kind, turn into Swiss cheese. Granted, he hasn't completely mastered it yet, but even so, its lethality wasn't anything to scoff at. As for the air hop, well, this is more of an insurance. Since he has mastered the skill, he could keep using it so long as he has ki, and with his control over his ki, the cost of using air hop drastically fell. He couldn't use it indefinitely of course, but he could get up to a decent height in one go. That being said though, he needed to be careful with this skill, especially once he decided to land. For Cedric, this skill is something that could help him deal with pesky flying enemies. Not that he has encountered anything so far, but it's best to prepare just in case. With how much the undead evolved during his runs? He wouldn't be surprised if one of them decided to fucking grow wings, because why the fuck not, and start harassing him. He doesn't want to fail his attempts, just because he can't deal with a flying unit. Education. This skill represents the user's knowledge of both the mundane and mystical aspects of the world. It also provides an additional bonus to the user's learning speed. Current learning speed bonus, 10%. Note, this skill's level cap is currently unknown. Asterisk. Most of his passive skills have reached full mastery. The new one, Education, was the only one he hadn't mastered yet. And with its description, he wouldn't be mastering it anytime soon. The learning speed bonus was nice, though. Add his, quite frankly broken, rate of learning thanks to the learning skill, plus the bonus of the Scholar perk, Cedric was like a black hole when it comes to absorbing knowledge and information. Sighing in content, he dried himself and rested on his bed. He stared at the ceiling, feeling bored for a bit. But that's when a sudden development alarmed him. A grimace suddenly appeared on his face as he abruptly sat up from the bed. Closing his eyes, he sank his perception within his body, more specifically, at his heart. There, he saw that his White Lotus hollow core was stirring. The abundant ki circulating within his body was causing a development that was quite troubling. Silently cursing to himself, he forcefully calmed down and stepped out of his room. He then speed-walked into the hallway, making his way towards the gym on the ground floor of the hotel and occupying one of the reinforced rooms there. Locking the door behind him, he sat down in the middle of the room and sighed. He then released his suppression over his ki and allowed the development to naturally happen. His hollow core suddenly started quaking. It then siphoned all of his ki out of nowhere. Cedric's body then turned into a funnel that absorbed the potent energy within his surroundings, turning them into ki to support its growth. Shortly after, the hollow core changed. It's no longer hollow, it has now turned into a solid core, meaning that Cedric had a breakthrough and entered the second stage of the White Lotus core technique. But as Cedric was about to sigh in relief, a series of system alerts swarmed his vision. Alert! Host's body gained an abundance of ki, which could be used to enhance the user's aptitude. Checking parameters, confirming user's current aptitude. Notice: the user's body is now eligible for a qualitative upgrade. Upgrade commencing in 3, 2, 1. Cedric then immediately lost consciousness, which was probably for the best since the sudden elevation of his aptitude was bound to be incredibly painful and torturous. The pain was something that he couldn't tolerate at his current class tier and level. User Cedric's evolution is underway. Referring to the database for following protocols. Applying for the Genius Protection Protocol. Confirmed. User Cedric is deemed to be a heaven-defying genius. Deploying the isolation barrier. Within the reinforced room, Cedric's unconscious body was writhing. His muscles were squirming and his blood curdled. An invisible force field appeared around him, isolating the commotion that was happening. This was done with the Achilles system. After 2 hours, strings of notifications appeared once more. User Cedric's evolution was successful. Overall aptitude rating changed to EX rank. It is confirmed that user Cedric was the only one who achieved this within the past century. Unbelievable achievement acquired. Congratulations, user Cedric. Aquila has granted you second-class card slot, L, subclass card slot, 10k T2DS, and a Hell Dive pardon ticket. Alert. Due to the user's evolution, changes have been made. Race, human, human 2. Title added, heaven-defying genius. Titles fused, scholar plus sword child plus heaven-defying genius equals son of heaven. Skills fused, vision plus smell, plus touch plus taste plus listening plus recovery plus tolerance superhuman physique. Skills fused, learning plus multitasking plus intuition plus tactics plus deception plus willpower superhuman perception. Name, Cedric Stormrider. Age, 21. Race, human 2. Class, Tier 1, Swordsman. Level, 2. Titles, Veteran Undead Slayer, Son of Heaven. System Authority, LV.8. Aptitude. Body, EX. Energy, EX. Spirit, EX. Locked. Tier 2 REQ. Final rating, EX. Skills. Actives, Sword Key, M, Kickboxing, M, Iron Skin, M, Multi-Stab LV.3, Airhop, M. Passives, Superhuman Physiology, U, Superhuman Perception, U, Education LV.3, Key Mastery, M, Footwork, M. Mandatory Task. Hell Dive, survive the endless undead horde for 3 hours. Rewards 100% Demon Soul Gain, Clearance Streak +1. Punishment for failure, Failure Streak +1. Record, Clear Streak 6, Failure Streak 0. Race, Human 2. Gain through qualitative evolution of the human bloodline. Plus 15% natural charm, increased luck, increased life expectancy, greatly increased intelligence, system authority increased. Asterisk. Title, Son of Heaven. You're the real deal, 1 in a million genius. What eludes the most is obvious to you. The world looks upon you favorably and anticipates the changes you might bring to your era. Learning speed bonus, plus 200%, enlightenment chances, greatly increased, system authority greatly increased. Asterisk. Superhuman physique, unique. Gained through fusing the mastered senses of a baseline superhuman. It wouldn't be wrong to say that this is the true foundation of superhumans. Note, the effects of the skills used for this skill don't disappear. With this skill, their effects are magnified by an additional 50%. Asterisk. Superhuman perception, unique. Your mind ascended to a realm that most wouldn't be able to understand. Your perception allows you to discover and analyze things that most either couldn't sense or couldn't even begin to fathom. With this skill, your status as a superhuman was solidified even further. Note, the effects of the skills used for this skill don't disappear. With this skill, their effects are magnified by an additional 50%. Asterisk. Second-class card slot, Legend, opens up another slot for a class. Subclass card slot opens up a slot that allows you to gain an occupational subclass. Hell Dive pardon ticket allows you to skip one monthly mandatory service. Cedric whistled upon seeing the numerous system alerts swimming in his vision. He certainly wasn't expecting that a development like this would happen just because he broke through the second stage of his White Lotus core technique. It was a pleasant surprise though, if only a little bit embarrassing since he had to explain to the hotel staff what happened to him. Thankfully, they bought his lousy excuse, saying that the reason behind him losing consciousness was because he just pushed himself a little too hard. Still, with these changes, Cedric could feel the absurd difference between him and the common people around him. From his perception, he's surrounded by tier 2s at most. They're strong, but he could confidently say that he could reduce them into a bloody mist with a single punch. Yes, it's that absurd. His field of senses expanded to a kilometer radius around him comfortably, meaning that he could maintain it just like this without feeling any strain whatsoever. If he pushes himself, he could cover half of the city under his surveillance. His adaptability shot through the roof thanks to the superhuman physique. Hell, with his EX-ranked aptitude? He might even be able to contend with common tier 5s for a minute or two. The class slots saved my problems too. Cedric inwardly cheered. While he wasn't expecting to be rewarded with this achievement, no one would hear him complaining. Having an additional class allows him to deceive demons more effectively. He can essentially create an alter persona out of it, and best believe that he would abuse the heck out of it. Earning a subclass was good too. With his learning speed explosively raised with the recent additions to his profile, this should provide him with sufficient distraction to get rid of his boredom. Still, Son of Heaven, huh? He pondered inwardly. He could honestly say that he doesn't know what to feel about this title. He would even go as far as saying that he probably doesn't deserve to be called as such. How can an ex-convict like me deserve such a title? He scoffed inwardly. If I were to reveal this to the world, they might kill me and call me a heretic. Still, though, this title has been given to him by Akala herself. It seems that the consciousness of the world couldn't care less about its natives' opinions. In hindsight, at least my information is more secure thanks to this title. He continued, a LV.8 system authority puts me at the same level as the royal lineage or governors. This essentially means that Akala will now do her best to protect him since he's considered as an important piece in the grand scheme of things. She will go as far as forging his documents comprehensively just to shield him from prying eyes. With this protection and Cedric's cautious nature, he could take his time and develop his skills. As for what he might do in the future, well, Cedric's still figuring that out, but of course, Akala wouldn't dare to directly interfere with how he lives his life. That, and access to more information is what Cedric liked with this increased authority. He's thankful for it since it protects him. Once he was done cleaning himself, he stood in front of the mirror to see the changes that happened to him. Geez. He laughed mirthlessly. Cedric was already handsome before, but now, this is just pushing it. When people talk about the body of a Greek god, they're talking about his body. His sheer beauty was enhanced sharply after his evolution. He's taller, inherently charming and seductive, and extremely strong. Truly, he became one of a kind. Shaking his head, he stepped out of the bath and changed into a more comfortable set of clothes. He then opened his inventory whilst drying his hair, after which, he used the second-class card slot. Alert, second-class card slot, legend, used. Congratulations! You may now pick a class amongst the FF. A long class list appeared before him, catching him by surprise. It's letting me pick? He murmured softly. I guess that's why it's the legendary rarity. The item's rarity wasn't limited to letting him pick a second class from himself, it also included a broad range of class rarity for him to choose from. His main class, Swordsman, was of the common tier. It's not bad, but not so good either. During his awakening ceremony, this class was automatically assigned to him. Now, he could choose something for his second class. And if he were to be honest, it's a little overwhelming. Still, he took his time to analyze each one. Thankfully, he could read fast and had a sharp memory. It also helped that the system allowed him to eliminate others that he's not interested in. Still, with how many there were on that list, it took him 30 minutes to pick. Even then, he had more than one to choose from, so he still needed some deliberation. Damn, this is difficult. He grumbled inwardly. He almost preferred that he be assigned a class instead of choosing one. But of course, he still did his best to weigh the pros and cons of each class he was interested in. Ultimately, he made his choice. And he picked. Asterisk. Demon Slayer, T1 Legend. This class revolves around hunting and slaying demons until there's none of them left. By choosing this class, you are painting a target to your back because demons will sense the oozing blood of their kind at your hands. You will incur their hatred, but past that hate lies fear, they will be afraid of you. Skills unlocked: Demon Lore, Slayer's Mark, Corruption Resistance. Asterisk. Choosing this class might appear somewhat contradictory to his plans since he wanted to avoid their attention, yet he chose a class that's specifically geared to get their attention. Still, nobody could deny that this class was just too good to pass. Demon Lore grants him access to Akala's demon database, albeit limited with his tier. What makes them strong, their weaknesses, their tendencies, their preferred lairs, etc.? Cedric could study them directly from that source, meaning that the value of this skill was immeasurable. Slayer's Mark was a passive skill that gives him bonus stats, depending on how many demons he killed so far. At base, he receives a 5% buff whenever he's facing any type of demons. This skill will level up the more demons he kills, so that buff will increase as well. And finally, the corruption resistance, the skill gives him a flat -10% chance of being corrupted when he comes in contact with demonic corruption. And while he's at it, he also used the subclass card slot. While it is not of legendary rarity, the item still allowed him to pick his subclass. The list was quite long. He saw lists of common occupations, and those he had never seen nor heard of before. Eventually, he made his choice. He picked the scribe, which dabbles with inscriptions. He initially wanted to pick the smith, but he decided to let it go for now. He chose the scribe since it will help him with his immediate problems. And finally, since he had achieved his goal, with his aptitude ranking at EX rank, he could finally start leveling up. System, show me my public profile please. Request accepted. Confirmed, user's authority LV.8, displaying public profile. User profile, public. Name, Cedric Stormrider. Age, 21. Sex, male. Race, human. Class, main swordsman, scribe. Short background. Cedric Stormrider was born in the fallen city of Fiore to Ravel Delacour and Derek Stormrider. He's the oldest amongst his siblings, Fiona and Robert Stormrider. An unfortunate accident befell his family. For more details, check the article about the fall of Fiore City, which took the lives of his family, save his. Due to the difficulty of his monthly mandatory service, details, redacted, he got admitted to the Risk Management Center of the Blue Jewel Valley branch and has stayed there for more than 6 years. Recently however, through a stroke of good luck, Cedric cinched a close victory on his difficult task and ran away with it, allowing him to clear his sentence on his own and be sanctioned from the RMC. Currently, he's on parole and receiving therapeutic help from Dr. Vega of the Renew Life Institute. He's been diagnosed with social anxiety, clinical depression, and mild sociopathic tendencies. That said, Dr. Vega claimed that he has a great chance at recovery, showing signs of willingness to receive help. Cedric blinked upon reading all of those. He then let out a snort and closed the window. Well, it's not inaccurate to say the least. He mused to himself, with Akila's interference, even I wouldn't be able to tell that this profile was heavily lacking in information. That's great. At least the world itself is on my side. That's oddly comforting. The Akila system will never display all the details of a person without their consent. Not even their aptitude rating will be there if the users themselves don't want it to be seen, not to mention their skills or the details of the monthly mandatory service. For the overall aptitude ratings and details of the monthly mandatory service though, some people might be able to bypass the initial security measure by having a decently high level of system authority, as Cedric has. That being said, the Akila system tries to be fair. If a third party tries to use their system authority to see a user's private information, the target will receive an alert revealing who exactly did it. And since these alerts come from the system itself, they couldn't be any more legit and are enough to be used as proof for future use. Akila forging his documents according to his tendencies was one hell of an advantage that Cedric plans to capitalize on. Cedric has never been a fan of showing off, so he sees this as a huge favor. All of this was simply because he was deigned as a heaven-defying genius, or ironically, a son of heaven. The world wanted to protect his existence, so it was willing to bend the rules for him a bit through the Genius Protection Protocol. Sighing to himself, Cedric dismissed the alerts and checked his log. There, the recent alerts were recorded and it got his attention. Congratulations on unlocking the profession subclass. You have chosen Scribe as your subclass. Subclass, Scribe, LV.1/100. The term for ancient record keepers, scribes are people who translate ancient texts and deciphers unknown languages, inscriptions, runes, etc. They also compile this information and leave it as their legacy for the next generation to use as a reference. By choosing this subclass, you are rewarded with the skills, Linguist, fused with Education skill, Decode, Symbol Mastery, and Focus. System, show me my public profile please. Request accepted. Confirmed, user's authority LV.8, displaying public profile. // User profile, public. Name, Cedric Stormrider. Age, 21. Sex, male. Race, human. Class, main swordsman, scribe. Short background. Cedric Stormrider was born in the fallen city of Fiore to Ravel Delacour and Derek Stormrider. He's the oldest amongst his siblings, Fiona and Robert Stormrider. An unfortunate accident befell his family. For more details, check the article about the fall of Fiore City, which took the lives of his family, save his. Due to the difficulty of his monthly mandatory service, details, redacted, he got admitted to the Risk Management Center of the Blue Jewel Valley branch and has stayed there for more than 6 years. Recently, however, through a stroke of good luck, Cedric cinched a close victory on his difficult task and ran away with it, allowing him to clear his sentence on his own and be sanctioned from the RMC. Currently, he's on parole and receiving therapeutic help from Dr. Vega of the Renew Life Institute. He's been diagnosed with social anxiety, clinical depression, and mild sociopathic tendencies. That said, Dr. Vega claimed that he has a great chance at recovery, showing signs of willingness to receive help. Cedric blinked upon reading all of those. He then let out a snort and closed the window. Well, it's not inaccurate to say the least. He mused to himself, with Akila's interference, even I wouldn't be able to tell that this profile was heavily lacking in information. Heh, that's great. At least the world itself is on my side. That's oddly comforting. The Akila system will never display all the details of a person without their consent. Not even their aptitude rating will be there if the users themselves don't want it to be seen, not to mention their skills or the details of the monthly mandatory service. For the overall aptitude ratings and details of the monthly mandatory service though, some people might be able to bypass the initial security measure by having a decently high level of system authority, as Cedric has. That being said, the Akila system tries to be fair. If a third party tries to use their system authority to see a user's private information, the target will receive an alert revealing who exactly did it. And since these alerts come from the system itself, they couldn't be any more legit and are enough to be used as proof for future use. Akila forging his documents according to his tendencies was one hell of an advantage that Cedric plans to capitalize on. Cedric has never been a fan of showing off, so he sees this as a huge favor. All of this was simply because he was deigned as a heaven-defying genius, or ironically, a son of heaven. The world wanted to protect his existence, so it was willing to bend the rules for him a bit through the Genius Protection Protocol. Sighing to himself, Cedric dismissed the alerts and checked his log. There, the recent alerts were recorded and it got his attention. Congratulations on unlocking the Profession subclass. You have chosen Scribe as your subclass. Subclass, Scribe, LV.1/100. The term for ancient record keepers, scribes are people who translate ancient texts and deciphers unknown languages, inscriptions, runes, etc. They also compile this information and leave it as their legacy for the next generation to use as a reference. By choosing this subclass, you are rewarded with the skills, Linguist, fused with Education skill, Decode, Symbol Mastery, and Focus. The difference between main classes and subclasses is that the former can't level up. Once you've been assigned a main class, you'd be stuck with that until you advance to the next tier and are given a chance to switch. Even then, users will only be given a single chance to switch their classes in their entire life. The latter, on the other hand, doesn't work like that. So long as one could reach the maximum level of their subclass, they'd be given a chance to choose another one. Meaning that, if someone really wanted to, they could learn all the lifestyle professions out there. Leveling up a subclass doesn't require demon souls, it's based on effort and results. That being said, similar to main classes, there are tons of subclass specializations out there that are almost limitless. It would be a daunting task to learn all of it, so nobody has tried to ever since. Cedric himself had no desire to learn all the lifestyle professions. There are only a few that caught his attention and interest. Even then, he had to focus on his main class, so at best, these would be side projects. With his curiosity piqued, Cedric brought up the skills he received from his subclass. Decode LV.1. The ability to break down information into manageable parts, allowing for ease of overall analysis of the whole thing. Plus 10% decoding speed. Symbol Mastery LV.1. Language, inscriptions, runes, etc. Everything has its own way of relaying information, symbols are the general terms for that. Plus 10% symbol analysis, plus 5% symbol carving. Focus LV.1. This skill represents the user's ability to dedicate their entire mind to a chosen subject, boosting the speed at which they absorb, process, and relay information. Plus 50% learning speed bonus when active. Note: prolonged use might cause sharp headaches to the user. Use wisely. // Damn. I'm loaded with learning speed bonuses. Cedric chuckled to himself. And isn't that the truth? If he were to stack all of the things that gave him a learning speed bonus, he might be able to have a doctorate degree by the end of this day. It's that absurd. Hell, he's actually struggling to prevent himself from studying right now, because his instincts told him that once he begins, not even a natural disaster would pull him away from it. It's quite scary actually, and he trusts his instincts well enough to not ignore it. He needed time to adjust to things, after all, he just evolved and received these skills yesterday. His physique and perception were already working overtime to adjust to it, so he only needed to wait for a little more before he could safely go at it. Cedric also couldn't level up just yet. Well, he technically could, but it would be wiser for him to wait. The main reason was that he wanted to refine/purify demon souls before using them to level up. In truth, this is more than a conspiracy theory more than anything since he only read it online and nobody has proven it so far. According to the post he read, leveling up using demon souls might prove dangerous in the future since demon souls were no less than a compressed ball of demonic corruption. Everybody knows that using demon souls to level up has always been risky. Users always had the chance to go mad during their level ups thanks to the lingering essence of demons in the souls. But so long as someone can endure the temptation and guard their sanity, they can safely harness its power. The post added a theory that the whispers of madness and temptations during the use of demon souls were only the beginning. They said that somewhere deep inside all superhumans, traces of corruption are present and that, one day, the demons would use this hidden/slumbering corruption against humanity. The post garnered much attention, and Cedric could vaguely recall hearing about it on TV. It's alarming, but nothing has been proven so far. Many people don't believe what's written in the post. Some refuse to even acknowledge the idea. Cedric, being cynical at times, thought that the poster was making some sense. Then again, nothing has been proven, so his judgment was reserved. Still, though, this sparked an idea within him. What if he could discover a way to purify demon souls? What if he could get rid of its foul aspects and make the assimilation process painless? Wouldn't that be for the best? Hell, this idea might make him a pioneer and win him some awards in the future. But his main agenda was preservation, of course. If he's gonna use a foreign substance as fuel to strengthen himself, he would want the best, so it's worth researching for. With his speed at analyzing and processing information, it wouldn't take him long before he concludes, at least a short-term one for now. He wants to level up and advance his tier as soon as possible since he already delayed it for too long. He just wants to see if his idea is plausible or not. If it is, then great. He would start purifying the hell out of them demon souls, maybe even sell some online, just for the heck of it. If it doesn't work, well at least he tried. His willpower should be strong enough to handle tier 1 demon souls anyway. There's practically zero risk for him to fall into madness or temptation. This is the reason why he chose the scribe as his first subclass. He wanted to build a purification array to help him with this task. There were other methods he could use, but none of them were cheap, and Cedric was saving money so he chose to do it this way for now. Now, he just needs to wait until his body completely adjusts to his recent evolution and he could start experimenting. Alert! Demon lore leveled up to 10 out of 100. Alert! Education leveled up to 4. Alert! Education leveled up to 5. Alert! Education. Alert! Education leveled up to 10. Skills, decode, focus, and symbol knowledge reached LV.10 out of 100. Subclass, scribe, 10 out of 100. Ever seen someone speedrun their way into a PhD? Well, Cedric almost certainly did, in 3 days too. That was absurd, but in a world filled with superhumans, this feat wouldn't be considered an exaggeration. Many have done similar things before, others even escalated it to a whole new level, so Cedric wasn't all that proud of what he had achieved. Still, he worked for it. His absurd learning speed felt like cheating, but nobody would hear him complaining. Seriously, even Cedric found this a bit absurd. There was a time when all he needed was to glance at the first few pages of the book and his mind would already go through extensive lengths and theories, which mostly ended up proven as he finished the book he was reading. He only needed minutes to consume all the knowledge available in a book, and once he had read enough about a certain subject, he would take online exams to prove his knowledge and he passed them with flying colors. Now, Cedric's mind was filled with all sorts of mundane knowledge about science, mathematics, engineering, and medicine that he could review whenever the need for it arose. On top of that, Cedric was also learning more about demon lore, as well as subjects that would help him increase his subclass level. Cedric did all of this without compromising his combat training too. This meant that he was extremely productive every day. Thanks to his studies, he managed to gauge the plausibility of his plan to refine demon souls. As it turns out, he wasn't the first one to entertain the idea. There had been people who had tried it in the past, yes, even before the article he had seen online was posted. Sadly, none of them succeeded. Cedric wasn't going to give up though. Although others before him failed in their attempts, it doesn't necessarily mean that he too would fail. It was fortunate that their experiments were documented neatly and there were copies online. His system authority was high enough to access them, and it would certainly help with his own research. From the clues he received, including the documentation of those who failed before him, the idea of purifying demon souls was plausible. Still, this will be a work in progress, but Cedric had time. Between training his combat prowess and pouring hours into his studies and research, Cedric made sure to squeeze in some time for rest and relaxation as well. By now, his aversion towards crowded spaces was slowly diminishing. The constant exposure to society and civilization was improving his mental state slowly. Dr. Vega said that he's doing really good, and that if this continues, it wouldn't be long until he's fully cleared from the institute. Currently, Cedric is resting in his hotel room. The construction of his home was still underway, so he could only stay here for now. Not that he's mad about it though, the only complaint he had was that the room service was expensive. Anyway, Cedric was absent-mindedly shifting through channels online, feeling quite bored since nothing was interesting so far. Just as he was about to shift to the gaming section, a news flash suddenly startled him, and also the others who were tuning into the entertainment channel. Just in. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your host, Chris Fugerson, giving you exclusive news right out of the oven. I hope everybody's having a peaceful evening so far. Let me start by apologizing to everybody who was rendered surprised by my sudden appearance, but a piece of surprising news has been relayed to us, and we absolutely cannot wait to share it with everybody. According to a trusted source, the Outer World Expedition Team, OWET, just returned from their mission. Insert pic here. That's them, everybody. Please don't fret, according to our source, the team was intact and uninjured when they encountered them. They're only exhausted from their mission, since they've literally just returned. Our sources approached them with the intent of knowing how their mission went. And although the whole team was exhausted, they were eager to report that their mission had been a success so far. For your information, the OWET is formed by the government with the sole purpose of exploring the outside world and checking for any recent developments. They also go on missions that might allow the Federation to reclaim lost lands to expand our home and secure resources to advance our civilization. This team had been dispatched last year, and their mission, according to what we have gathered so far at least, was to scout nearby places for any possible developments. Now, we aren't exactly sure of the mission's contents, because neither the team nor the Federation were allowed to disclose it, but with the team returning with a positive response, then we can be assured that, whatever they did out there, must have been productive. Because of the NDA, we could only speculate for now. Did they discover a resource load? Maybe we find traces of ancient civilizations that could help us improve our technology. Maybe they found an untouched continent that we can use to expand our home and influence. Either way, these will all be just speculations until the Federation releases an official statement. Even so, I, for one, am extremely excited about this. Best believe that I will be waiting in anticipation for what will come next. And that would be it for today's Flash News. Once again, I am your host, Chris Fugerson, giving you exclusive news right out of the oven. Want to keep up with the latest news from yours truly? Then please consider subscribing to our channel and follow us on our social media platforms. Turn those notifications on, and you will receive alerts as soon as we have news for you. Thank you for tuning in, and I will see you next time. Bye. Huh. Cedric blinked after listening to that. He was initially surprised about the sudden mention of the outer world. Thankfully he was more than knowledgeable now that he managed to recover fast and focus on the news. Right, the outer world. That's what modern people call that place now. Some old-timers would refer to it as the Old World or the Forgotten Continents. Neither term was wrong, so to say, it's just preference. The cataclysm did more damage to the world than what humans initially expected. Even though centuries have passed since it happened, its effects can still be felt through modern times. Back then, humans were incredibly weak. As a result, they could only retreat and cower under the might of demons. The majority of humans back then left their homes, leaving behind all traces of tradition, knowledge, and memories for the sake of survival. By the time Akala came to their aid, the humans were already down to a fraction of their numbers and were cornered. Thanks to the emergence of superhumans, humanity was able to somewhat recover and carve a piece of the world to call home. Since then, they have done their best to bolster their defenses, recover their numbers, and raise strong warriors to keep existing. Humanity did manage to recover at least, but it's never been the same since then. As society changed to accommodate the existence of superhumans, the homes they left behind were pushed to the back burner. They just couldn't spare enough manpower to reclaim them.